It's like,
there we go. We're live. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dillon Hosier, CEO at ICAN, and with me is Nicole Bernstein from K-12. You want to say hello?
hi, everybody. It's been kind of a crazy month, actually. May has been pretty intense, and last week felt like an entire month in and of itself. So I'm actually really excited to dig into what we're going to be talking about today, because we've had so many people asking us, what does it mean? What happened? How did it happen? Is that how it normally happens? What's next? So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, so today we are doing kind of a cool format of a show, while I'm rustling paper here in the back, called Stop the Tape, where we are going to look at the legislative hearing that happened last week with regard to the new anti-Semitism bill in California, AB 715. And before we get into that hearing, we will look, I'll give you a quick snapshot and tell you what happened over the past week or so. And then from there, we'll take a deep dive into the hearing itself, and you'll get a sense of what of kind of the conversations around this new anti-Semitism bill. I do want to say, and Nicole, feel free to give your perspective as well, that those of you who are familiar with ICAN and the work that we've done with regard to ethnic studies and AB 1468 in particular, know that we were opposed to that bill and had proposed different alternatives to address the issues in K-12 public schools in California. I'm very happy to report that we are thrilled with the new direction. It is the right direction, in our opinion. It's not 100%. Nothing is ever perfect, but it is a world of difference compared to what we saw again just a little over a week ago, and the path that we were on with regard to ethnic studies. So I don't know if Nicole, if you want to kind of give your perspective, just so people understand that we're heading into kind of a new phase that we think is much more constructive and positive.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I know that there was a lot of the intention behind 1468, which was the content standards for ethnic studies, I think was, there was good intent there, but the way that it was written and the way that it would have been potentially implemented didn't actually give us the protections that we needed. And it was a lot of work and a lot of political capital, which is something that I had always been worried about. And I did mention this, many times over the last few months when each time we were dealing with this, and each time parents would ask, hey, this is an ethnic studies bill. It's for content standards. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? And it's really confusing because a lot of these bills are written in a way that sounds really great, but when you actually look at what it does or doesn't do, it's a whole different ballgame. So there's so many. This is like an onion with so many layers, and then the bait and switch, or I guess the calibration over the weekend. That it was Mother's Day weekend, not ideal timing. Really threw a lot of people off. I mean, including us. Like we were hoping to get a day off, but we had to bounce back into action. Now, what was interesting to me about this is not just that it was a switch and they started focusing on anti-Semitism, but what they did was, and Dillon, we were talking about this a lot, like this is what we actually should have been talking about all along from the very beginning. They were trying to fix this issue with a new ethnic studies bill, came into all of the problems that we tried to warn that would happen, and then pivoted at the last minute. So I do think that this was a good pivot. We weren't super excited about it because it did not include the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. But we're going to see in a little bit how that went down during the comments from the opposition, and then discuss the actual debate that the legislators had. And I think it will help a lot of people understand a little bit better what the process is for these things. I mean, that's the biggest question people have. This is such a foreign, weird world, of bills and rules. And I don't know about you, but so many times I get the question, how is that legal? How can they do that? Can they do that? So this is what we're going to try to shed some light on that and tell you what is legal, what isn't legal, what was interesting, and what we should be paying attention to as this bill moves through the process. So I'm excited.
Well, great. So let's go ahead and jump in. I think now we can give a little quick snapshot, just a few minutes, on what happened and where we are now. So
take us back to February.
Take us back to February 20. I think it was February 21st. I believe it was Friday, February 21st. The California. This would be the California Ethnic Studies Bill. There was only one Ethnic Studies bill this session introduced in California. It was this one, AB 1468, authored primarily by Assembly members Zabur and Adis. Zabur from Southern California, Adis from Northern California, both members of the Jewish Caucus, and primarily sponsored by JPAC. Which is an organization that represents most of the American Jewish organizations throughout California, some of the mainstream organizations. And they had gotten about 29 other co-authors or co-sponsors for the bill, for a total of 31. Most of them were from the Jewish caucus, a very few handful from other caucuses in the state legislature. And what they had crafted was something that, frankly, if you look at how ethnic studies, and again, we've spoken about this many times on other broadcasts, but just to remind people, if you look at AB 1468 along the spectrum of legislation that came before it, that is AB 101 in 2021 and then AB 2016 in 2016, this would have been a massive expansion and entrenchment of ethnic studies within our K-12 public schools. We're lucky that somehow the teachers' unions and other pro-ethnic studies people didn't understand the gift that was truly given to them by the legislature on this point, I would say, with regard to the expansion of ethnic studies. But so be it. Maybe they didn't see the opportunity. We have major concerns about the standards and the way that they would have been implemented. Again, if you look at the way the original AB 2016 bill was implemented by the State Board of Education and the creation of the draft model curriculum, it ended up being terrible. It needed major correction. And the major correction really itself wasn't even that great, as we've discussed over the past few months.
Right. So like the original, the AB 101 there was the guardrails, and you needed, all these 7 guardrails, because the intent, the intent of the legislature is that you not use any of the bad materials, right? And there was a lot of conversation about these 7 guardrails of, well, if you have a piece of legislation that needs that many caveats and that many sort of like reminders not to discriminate against students, in classrooms as you're implementing this, and just a reminder, we did take out all of the, these biased lessons plans for a reason, so don't put them back in, etc. Like, it just felt so, it's like they were trying to cover something up with another thing and then another thing and another thing, and it just didn't work. And then everyone scrambled to try to get something going in their districts, which we have all been dealing with at the district level for the last few years. And then in January, so before this bill was released, there was no budget for it. And it was released on January 10th, the budget for California, with 0 money for ethnic studies. And that, in effect, I guess, pulled the rug out from underneath the mandate, because the mandate doesn't kick in if it's not funded. And so some districts did a pause, some didn't. Most districts kind of continued. But then everyone was waiting for the May budget, which came out the day after this hearing that we're going to be, kind of taking a deeper dive into. So it's been like a lot of running around in circles. I think if I were a superintendent or a board member in a district, I would be pretty annoyed, because this is a lot of extra work that all of these school districts have had to go through and try to scramble and create something, and all the controversy that it's happened. Like, just go to a school board meeting anywhere in California, but also this country over the last 4 or 5 years. It is like a shit show with a capital S, right? And pardon my French, and it's so much controversy and so many people coming in and so many people upset and so many lawsuits. Like, so much of this could have been avoided. Then February, they release this, and then it devolves into, suddenly, becoming sort of reborn, right? Like,
Yeah.
ta-da!
So yeah, that was really the extraordinary thing was we did not expect, at least I did not expect such a significant policy expansion of ethnic studies, certainly not after the year that we saw in 2024. And so we opposed the bill. I think we demonstrated that in current law, there is more than sufficient protections and guardrails that need to be enforced. We've seen notes from the state superintendent in terms of these UCP complaints, as well as from the Attorney General, his legal notices reminding local educational authorities of their responsibilities in law.
Obligations to protect their students.
Correct. So so all of that together, kind of worked against, and in my opinion, it worked against the case to be made for 1468. And I think it also, I want to say very kindly and diplomatically, sidestepped the core issue, which is anti-Semitism. And so we are very happy, at least speaking for myself, I'm very happy that the authors and the diversity caucuses, as they call them, got together and chose to change direction and focus on an anti-Semitism bill. And this is something, by the way, that in the many years I've been doing policy and legislation like this, this is quite the pivot, and it's a positive pivot. And I think it really speaks to the dedication of the authors and the sponsors to actually addressing the core issue. So we shall be.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. And I really do think that, I mean, credit is due for, I will say that for as long as we've been sort of doing this on the grassroots advocacy side, so often we feel like our advocacy to the elected officials, whether they're in our school districts or at the state legislature, like they're playing politics, right? They're taking the meetings with us, all with parents and whatnot, because they kind of have to, but it often can feel like they're just going through the motions. But I think what was so fascinating for us is when they did that switcheroo, it almost validated the fact that like they are actually listening. And, we say a lot of negative things about politicians these days, but I really want to give credit where credit is due. I feel like they heard us. And I want to really believe that it wasn't just because the teacher unions really, really, really didn't like the idea of, creating transparency for ethnic studies curriculum, that they would have to be forced to show people what they actually were teaching. I know that there was a lot of opposition. We saw it. But I really feel and want to believe that it was also that they were listening to parents. All of those conversations and all of those petitions and letters, and thank you everybody for, rallying, and you're in each of the individual districts to do this. It was like, it felt very reaffirming, I guess, that they're not just politicking around us and they're listening. So, lo and behold, the democratic process sometimes actually works.
Absolutely. And so the good news is that while we have kind of a condensed timeline, because we are significantly in the regular calendar of the California legislative session, we're about four months in at this point. We actually have a hearing on the new bill. So just the highlight is very quickly, 1468 is now on ice. It is now kind of tabled off to the side. It has been replaced with a new bill called AB 715. This bill focuses exclusively on issues surrounding anti-Semitism. And we will go through. You'll actually hear it in the hearing. You'll hear the authors explain elements of the bill and what it does, and you'll see why that we support it. So. And you should know that with AB 715, because we are in this more accelerated timeline now, just because it's been introduced last week, we had a hearing. It was introduced on Monday. It hit the public portal on Monday. It had its first hearing. It was on Wednesday, I believe, right, Nicole?
Yeah, Wednesday.
So on Wednesday, so 2 days later, it had its hearing. and now a week later it will have its fiscal analysis or its hearing in what's called the Appropriations Committee, and their job is to analyze the fiscal impact of this proposal on the state. Now, you will hear in the committee testimony that there are a lot of intent statements in the legislation, and so the fiscal what intent statements are, before I go on, what intent statements are kind of what they sound like. It is the legislature's intent to do X, Y, and Z. And again, we will go over that.
I get triggered when I hear that word, to be honest, because I've seen it now so many times, and it's always, what's the phrase? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Like,
yes.
we've been dealing with a legislative intent for so long now that it just triggers me. And it's, I guess we'll see what happens, but this is a huge opportunity, and I was pleasantly surprised last week when we were watching it. I really didn't know what to expect, and because of the fast turnaround time, everything felt really rushed. But and then was the fun part of watching the opposition,
right?
Which, I mean, guys, if you guys have some popcorn nearby, like, you should grab some, because it is amazingly bad and entertaining also, but scary.
And I think we're ready. I think we're ready to show that. Yeah. Is there anything else that we should mention?
I mean, this is one of those where we really do want to have more of a conversation and answer the questions that everybody has about this whole process. And so as we're going through it, we're watching the comments, and please put them in so that we can answer those questions in real time. But this is legislative process is weird. The whole thing is weird. But it is fascinating to see who's coming to these meetings to, show their support and to oppose. And then why do they oppose it? That is the part that really is the kicker. So I want to bounce into we're going to skip ahead just to show a few of the comments, and then Dillon, we can go back and watch what's actually in the bills. At first, I think people really need to see what the opposition is saying about this bill that we're gonna deep dive into. So
let's take a look. It looks bad already, I have to say.
Okay, yeah. So one thing you'll notice is, and not even in this frame, but oh my gosh, the keffiyeh wearing extravaganza that was last week's education committee meeting in Sacramento was in
experience. I lived under dictatorship and censorship.
Okay, she's
and I strongly oppose this bill.
Okay, thank you.
You do too.
There's a lot of those guys, but this guy right here, one of the first speakers.
My name is Brian Calderon Tabatabai. I'm an ethnic studies teacher, representative of the Association of Raza Educators, former mayor of the city of West Covina. Our members have had lawfare used against them, and they've been consistently thrown out of court, and we strongly oppose this bill.
Okay, so right off the bat, I mean, he's like the third speaker. He's an ethnic studies professor who's coming to oppose a bill that says hating Jewish students in K-12 is bad. And he's talking about this being lawfare, right? So like, he's very mad, this ethnic studies guy. And we're going to see a lot of this intersectionality happening with guys like this. I don't know if you can see some of his shirt. La Raza, I talk about La Raza a lot when I go into the history of ethnic studies and the origin story. And La Raza is an organization or a movement, actually, I would say, that is looking to decolonize America back to indigenous people. So that's what La Raza is. Let's keep going. I actually want to skip ahead.
My name is Yana Ordonez, and I'm a student of Sacramento State, and I am an ethics studies major who knows this is censorship of our students, censorship of our education, and censorship of our teachers.
Okay. College students, censorship.
But also, sorry, go ahead. I'm interrupting you.
No, but like a college student coming to this is a hearing for K-12, and there were a lot of college students there from all of these, and every single one of the college students who showed up happened to also be an ethnic studies major, which was, surprised, not surprised, right?
And again, this bill has nothing to do with ethnics. The new bill that they're opposing has nothing to do with ethnic studies. It is, as Nicole said, it is purely legislation to prevent discrimination primarily against Jews in the K through 12 public schools. This is
Yeah,
what
it's weird. It's like we actually ran into this a few years back when we did something similar in districts, but let's get another
I'm
one.
a student at Sac State, and I oppose AB 715.
Oh, I jumped ahead a little bit. He's also a student.
Hello, I'm Arden Fredman from Berkeley, California, a member of Berkeley Jewish Parents for Collective Liberation and daughter of a Holocaust survivor, and I oppose this bill.
Oh, the As a Jew crowd in full force at this meeting. I feel like there were around 70 of them. This is kind of where I think we talked about last week. Like, this is where identity politics starts to go haywire. Okay. As a Jew, Holocaust, descendant, which by the way, so am I. She uses Jewish, in Berkeley. Some of these are also teachers, which was shocking to me to see how many teachers were coming here to say that they opposed a bill that said hating Jews because we're Jews is bad. But this is where this whole identity politics thing, I don't know what the answer is, but if everyone's coming in as a descendant of Holocaust survivors and using that as the litmus test, then no wonder you have so many school board members and superintendents who are confused. There's so many mixed messages from the Jewish community on this, like, how do they know if JVP speaks for the Jewish community or AJC? They don't even know what some of these acronyms stand for, right? It's like, it's very confusing. And I really feel for the school board members and superintendents and even the legislators who are not Jewish, who don't know this inside baseball stuff. It must be so frustrating for them to see two completely opposite perspectives being so manipulated with the the identity politics piece of it. Like, it's a big question. I don't know. Like, maybe if you guys are also seeing this in your districts, this is something I almost want to force a conversation about. Is, as a Jew, as a Holocaust descendant, Holocaust survivor descendant, as a this, as a that.
Yeah. So one thing I'll say too, and then I want to answer Carly. Again, as a lobbyist, I can tell you that I've been in many different jurisdictions where, take Carson City, Nevada, for example, much smaller population in the state of Nevada. They have a very robust Jewish Voice for Peace present in southern Nevada. And you can imagine that folks up in Carson City, or even from northern Nevada, have never heard of Jewish Voice for Peace. And when you hear the name Jewish Voice for Peace, it sounds nice.
These are Jewish people who want peace, right? But it's like literally the opposite. So
they're usually not Jewish, and they're definitely not for peace.
Yeah.
So Carly, just to answer your question, and Carly is one of our great Jewish LAUSD moms here in Southern California. So thank you so much for joining. So Carly asks, how did they even know to show up? Wasn't this bill just introduced at this meeting? So it was just introduced a couple days before. And I think that's a really good point, actually, to bring up, Carly, that the other side is incredibly organized, and they tap into both the university faculty community. You'll see a lot of professors here. And then, of course, the university student population as well, to pack this room to oppose K through 12 policy, as Nicole highlighted. So that's a little unhinged, a little bizarre. I know that when I was in college, I was focused on graduating so I could be a productive member of society.
I was focused on going to football games and parties.
Put it up in a good space. But this is really these are professional activists, and this is really what we're seeing here. And I think the kind of the accidental benefit of the way this rolled out, and the way you'll hear a term later called gut and amend, the way that the gut and amend worked. These people may have been confused about what the legislation was and the dynamic and all of that. So that also played a role in it as well. But nonetheless, it is a new bill. They knew it was a new bill in advance. They knew the bill number. Most of them saw the text, and yet they still came out to oppose. So I just think it's pretty unhinged.
Totally unhinged. And I want to bounce back now into and kind of go back to the beginning so we can see what the actual bill says. But I just wanted to start with this because just so you have in mind, and we will come back to this to watch more of the opposition. But one thing I really wanted to highlight here is in the audience right here, if you can see my cursor, what you have is the entire senior staff of the Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum Consortium, that's a mouthful, and the Arab Resource Organizing, AROC Organizing Committee, Council, I can't remember. This right here is Laura Kaswani. She's part of AROC. They are definitely funneling money through the Muslim Brotherhood. I think FDD has a big thing on them. Also part of MECA, the Middle East Children's Alliance, which is, and there were a number of reports that came out even this past week. So that's Laura Kaswani right here, kind of hiding behind, and that is the infamous Teresa Montano. She comes and speaks in opposition to this later. We'll watch her later. You've got Tracy Noriega. These are all the Liberated Ethnic Studies people. The leads, the people who wrote the original ethnic studies bill for California, ethnic studies model curriculum for California, the one that had to be gutted because it was so bad. It wasn't actually gutted completely, but anyway, they showed up in force here. And we will get back to this because this is the part after you hear what the actual bill is all about and the conversations between the legislators, to then go back and hear the opposition will blow your mind. But we'll get to that. So that's a teaser. Let's go back and do some of the homework and the hard work, and then we'll come back to the popcorn portion of the evening. So I'm going to remove this, and you can put up the other video, and we can get to work on some fun legislation 101 California.
All right. So guys, so just so everyone understands, we are now, we took a peek into the opposition statements of the bill just to let you see the unhinged kind of, opposition. And now we're going to start over from the beginning of the hearing to let you see how it opens and to let you hear the bill authors explain what the bill is. And then Nicole and I will stop the tape as appropriate and make comments. All right. Is that fair, Nicole?
That's fair. I will say also that what was kind of funny is it wasn't just for us, and we can start the tape, but what was funny is that it was such a fast turnaround time for this that, and you might notice, everyone, as you're watching and listening, that even the bill authors misnamed the bill a number of times. So you'll hear AB 17 a couple of times. They all mean AB 715, but I guess they were scrambling, to get their talking points. But I was, well, we'll watch and then we'll discuss. But I was very impressed that this level of conversation was finally happening at the level of the state legislature. I mean, they created a lot of these issues by not putting together enforcement policies that would actually protect students that got us to this point. But I guess better late than never to finally be having this conversation. So kudos to them, and let's go in and review it and break it all down as to what it means and what is still the bill, what it still actually needs to be effective.
And I know we're like 25 minutes into this, so this is going to be a long stream, guys. This hearing was long. I'm not going to tell you exactly how long because I don't want to get freaked out. We're not going to watch the entire every single person's opposition in line. There were hundreds of people in the room who said they supported the bill and that they opposed the bill. We're going to watch the main substantive parts of the bill for you guys.
Yeah, the key actors, and kind of discuss like who they are and how come they were chosen to speak. I felt that the conversation was really interesting. Let's get to it. Let's get to the fun part.
Let's do it.
Started. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm calling this hearing of the Assembly Education Committee to order.
Now, what speed do you want to go at?
Yeah, so let's skip ahead. Although I will say that poor Al seemed super annoyed right off the bat, and I think I don't know if we want to watch or whatever, but he was going through the rules, and I've actually seen this happen in school board meetings where they know that something is going to be controversial, and so they see the packed room and they see all the kafiyas and they see all of that, and they know that they're in for a long meeting. And it's one of those, like, he kind of laid the law, but you could see that he was annoyed. He was like a dad, like, guys, we have rules, and these are the rules, and like, don't be breaking the rules. It was kind of funny.
All right, here we go. Ready?
Yep.
All right.
Please call the roll to establish a quorum. Here.
And by the way, we're okay with the speed, right? We'll go his normal speed.
I guess,
okay?
yeah. I mean, it will take longer, but it was funny to hear them all talking in like super fast pace. But
Let's
some of this
try.
stuff is really important to have.
We'll do a little faster there.
Okay, I'll
Oops, hold on. All
start
right.
over so everybody can hear me. Marisucci?
Here.
Marisucci here. Hoover?
Here.
Hoover here. Addis? Addis here. Alvarez? Ponta?
Blah, blah, blah,
Castillo
blah. Let's,
here.
yeah.
Castillo here. Garcia? Lowenthal? Lowenthal here. Patel? Patel here.
All right, a quorum has been established. I'd like to welcome all the committee members who are here and invite the rest of the committee to come to room 1100 for.
Can we skip
today's
ahead to
hearing. We
where,
have one bill
is
on
this where
file
he's,
today. One bill. That is
let's
Assembly
skip ahead to
Bill
when Spur actually
715.
presents it.
I'd like to note for the record that Assembly.
So there were like, two, there were the bill authors who we'll see, and then there were witnesses, and they also included some people to come
Good
in.
afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. Today I'm proud to present AB 715 together with my joint author, Assemblymember Don Addis. This new bill is the product of deep discussions and partnership among the Jewish, AAPI, Black, and Latino legislative caucuses, and represents a new approach to addressing growing and unacceptable anti-Semitism in K-12 schools. We are deeply grateful to the chairs of the Black, Latino, AAPI, and Jewish caucuses, Senator Dr. Akilah Weber-Pearson, Senator Lena Gonzalez, Assemblymember Mike Fong, Senator Scott Wiener, and Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel. The decision of these chairs to join as principal co-authors of this important bill is a clear demonstration of allyship and solidarity in our fight against hatred and bigotry in all its forms.
Okay, stop the tape for a second. That was, it seemed kind of a lot of like blah, 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 but that was the thing that was missing from AB 1468, is that they couldn't get them and there was not consensus, right? And so it's so like, the world of politics is all about compromise. I mean, at least it should be. And it's compromise between what different communities need and want and what can actually happen. But what was missing and what made 1468 such a hard bill to carry was that they didn't have that, which he just said now. The fact that they came on as co-authors means that like all of these conversations that happen behind the scenes and all of these meetings, these face-to-face meetings, it meant that people who had previously not wanted to sign on to the content standards, and the transparency and whatever, which would have been good, but again, it didn't actually solve the problem for us. But here they are signing on as co-authors to this bill.
And again, I think it's important to note that this is an anti-Semitism bill, right? This is not an ethnic studies bill. So all of these legislators of all these different backgrounds, at least the leadership, are committed to supporting this anti-Semitism bill. So I think that is a change. So by the way, kudos to the leadership, the legislative leadership, and also I know that our friend and colleague Irving Lebovic down here in Los Angeles played a central role in that. So Irving, if you're watching or anybody's watching with Irving, thank you.
I mean, I think a lot of people did in a lot of the behind the scenes, but they were trying to do that for the ethnic studies content standards one and couldn't, but this one did. And that is really important. I agree. I think it's one of those things where when you sit down and we'll listen now to the rest of Spur's opening statement, which is amazing.
Becker, whose commitment to ensuring that our schools are safe and affirming for not only Jewish students, but all students is unparalleled. Before Assemblymember Addis outlines what this bill does, I'd like to discuss why it's needed. At its core, this bill is a civil rights and social justice bill.
Amen.
And it's a bill that underscores our responsibility to assure that every child in California can attend a school that is safe, respectful, and affirming. While Jewish people make up approximately 3% of California's population, anti-Jewish hate crimes account for over 73% of all hate crimes motivated by religious bias reported in California.
73%.
In addition, there has been a massive, almost 900% increase in anti-Semitic hate crimes in the United States over the past 10 years, and we've seen a continued increase since the October 7th massacre. Unfortunately, California schools are not immune from this rise in anti-Semitism. Reports of anti-Semitic content and incidents in our schools have reached alarming proportions across the state. Not a week goes by when I don't hear from multiple constituents in my district about the hostile climate Jewish kids and families are experiencing in our K-12 schools.
I'm glad we're finally talking about
and this problem is
100%.
growing. Multiple school districts in California have adopted or are considering curriculum that results in vilification, ostracism, and hate of Jewish kids and families. And unbelievably, some school districts have even embraced course materials that justify violence against Jews. If you, like me, are wondering how this could possibly be true in the state of California, I'd like to share a few real-life examples. Last year, the San Francisco Unified School District maintained a resource library for teachers that included educational material that justified the slaughter of civilians on October 7th. Shockingly, that material originated from Hamas, the internationally recognized terrorist organization that was responsible for the October 7th terror attack.
Can you stop the tape?
Yeah.
I was like, stop the tape. Okay, so the teachers' resources that were provided.
SFUSD, by the way. SFUSD, not the union, SFUSD.
SFUSD. So we are used to seeing this coming in from all kinds of places. Oftentimes it does come in from the union, which we could talk about in a different webinar, but it's coming in. It actually came directly from Hamas into San Francisco. Like I honestly, that piece right there having been said, and mind you, the comments that we saw, the 2 or 3 that we'll go back to, was after he explains all of these incidents. So they are sitting there listening to this, showing that there's teacher training and teacher resources from Hamas being piped into California elementary, middle, and high schools. And those people in opposition were like, hey, you can't ban us from doing that. Let's go back to the tape.
In Santa Ana, the school district purposefully tried to hide the adoption of course materials that they knew the Jewish community considered objectionable, and even considered holding board meetings to adopt those materials on Jewish holidays so that Jews could not attend and object.
I mean,
recently, in the Pajaro Valley School District, Jewish parents who were raising concerns about the adoption of what they considered to be anti-Semitic curriculum were publicly castigated by 2 board members who made anti-Semitic comments about the entire Jewish community. And when called out by the county superintendent of schools, the Pajaro Valley School Board refused to sanction its members for their anti-Semitic comments. Just last month, our own California Department of Education ruled that lessons taught in a class at Branham High in the Campbell Union High School District discriminated against Jewish students.
Wait, stop the tape for a second.
School districts have
Campbell Union High School District is, to my knowledge, the only time that the California Department of Ed actually investigated to find a district at fault. Think of how many, I don't even know, like 1,000 examples, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, that had to be submitted for them to finally take note of one and condemn one 19 months later.
And are there others? Was there another one after that?
Not that I know of. I mean, there's lots of federal OCRs. I mean, hundreds of them. There are lots of lawsuits. He mentioned the Santa Ana one. There's lawsuits in Berkeley, in Menlo Park, in Los Angeles. That one got tossed out by a judge because
it's still alive. It's in the 9th Circuit now, so still alive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you look into the judge who threw that out, guess what? La Raza. So
right.
Obviously. But anyway, that was the first one ever that the California Department of Ed has said, oh, actually, yeah, maybe if you're using these materials, and I don't think it was the ones from Hamas, but imagine, oh, you're actually teaching materials that Hamas has provided to you. That might be in violation of civil rights for our Jewish students. That was the first time. So.
And by the way, it's a good sign that the CDE needs to start moving faster.
Yes.
Adopted harmful course materials, ignoring the concerns of Jewish parents. When Jewish families express concern, they have been berated and ignored. And when they file UCP complaints, those complaints are generally ignored as well. I want to be clear. This discrimination is not happening in all schools, and the vast majority of teachers are not anti-Semitic.
That is also
Yet
very
we
true.
cannot hide from the profoundly unfortunate truth that Jewish kids are being isolated, made to feel unwelcome, and verbally and physically attacked, and far too often our schools are failing to protect them. Some Jewish parents even feel compelled to go so far as to remove their students from California public schools.
Oakland
These
Unified
clear
School District.
examples demand a clear response. The conditions that some Jewish children, teachers, and families are enduring is unacceptable. Full stop. Yet some are urging us to do nothing now. In the 3 days since the bill has been in print, I've seen numerous attacks on the bill and on its co-authors that contain outright fabrications. I want to believe that this stems from a misunderstanding of the bill, because if someone actually understands this bill, which is fundamentally about preventing anti-Semitism and hate in California schools, and they still oppose it, I really have to wonder what their motivation might be.
Well, we'll see what their motivation is in a little bit.
Little more than advance the goal of strengthening protections against anti-Semitism and hate for students who are facing truly hostile school climates. We have a responsibility to assure that every child and family enjoys a school climate that is safe, respectful, and affirming. AB 715 lays the groundwork to do just that. Now I'd like to turn it over to my joint author, Assemblymember Addis, to provide additional information on what the bill will do.
I just want to give a big kudos to Zabur for this. This is fantastic.
100%.
It's exactly what I happen to be a constituent of his. I know other neighbors in the district feel the same. So thank you, Assemblymember Zabur, for saying this. It's super important.
I mean, this is what I was talking about before. How many times have we tried to explain to legislators that the same laws that are being actually upheld for other minorities, and even if you're not a minority, are not being upheld for students who are of Jewish descent, are Israeli, or even have God forbid, a positive outlook, opinion about Israel. Everything is turned inside out. And this was proof that we were not talking to a brick wall. They were listening. And I can't tell you how so many of the times what we need is to know that there's somebody out there who sees it and hears it and is willing to work with us to resolve it and to solve it permanently. And so this was a huge thanks to Assemblyman Spur. It was gratifying to watch. And then Addis just went and kicked it up a notch or two.
Addis is fantastic. So
amazing. Yes.
Well, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members and staff, for allowing us to present today in the fight against a very specific kind of hate that is directed towards Jewish students, and that hate is called anti-Semitism. I do also want to start with a thank you to lead author Assemblymember Zabur for his incredible leadership, to Senator Becker, who has been an immense part of this policy work, and to chairs of the diversity caucuses, Dr. Weber Pearson, Senator Gonzalez, Senator Wiener, Assemblymember Fong, Assemblymember Gabriel, who have come together as principal co-authors during this intense time of need. And I would say that this kind of unity is really can be a beacon of hope for many of our families in California. As you all know, and you've heard me say many times, I come to this work as a former teacher who has witnessed firsthand what happens when we create school environments that are safe, that are supportive, that are welcoming and affirming for students. We know that when that happens, learning is unleashed, that children are allowed to become the best of who they are, and they can learn not only vital knowledge and skills for the workforce, but learn how to participate meaningfully in our multicultural democracy. Unfortunately, as you have heard, this is not the case.
So that is what a lot of people think is ethnic studies. But it's not. It's just living in a country that is pluralistic, that is this experiment of all of these different cultures and backgrounds and religions, and not giving preferential treatment to one over the other. It's everybody comes here with what they have to offer that's making everything better for everybody else. That's what everyone thinks is ethnic studies, which I think is why so many people sort of support it. But what they don't really know is beneath that sort of description, what is actually happening. And Spur went into a little bit of like what's actually happening, and then she's going to go into more of it. But that is just important for me to know, because a lot of times, and this is a big discussion in the Jewish community as well. Do you support ethnic studies, or are you not? So how can you not support the teaching of real history? I'm like, I do. I just think that belongs in history. Are we not teaching real history in history classes? Show me that we're not.
And by the way, for anybody who says that in the Jewish community, why aren't you supporting SB 510 from Senator Richardson? Because that's a Black Caucus lead legislation. Where ICAN, excuse me, is proudly supporting it, because that's how you expand education. And so we thank Senator Richardson for doing that, and the Black Caucus for introducing it.
Case for many Jewish students who, particularly since the October 7th Hamas attacks, have faced increasingly dangerous anti-Semitic rhetoric, tropes, discrimination, and even physical attacks in our K-12 schools. And I know that we all agree that no child should ever experience hateful behavior, let alone at school, simply for being who they are. So how do we right this ship? Where do we go from here? AB 17 is a bill that is joint authored by my colleague, Assembly Member Zuber, and I, and principal co-author.
She means 715.
She means 715, yeah.
As we mentioned, by chairs of the Black, Latino, AAPI, and Jewish caucuses. And it's a very simple but effective and holistic solution that will both prevent and respond to anti-Semitism. AB 17 has one simple goal, which is to fight anti-Semitism through a multi-pronged approach. This bill will strengthen and expand the definitions of nationality and religion, create a more robust protections for students facing religious or nationality-based discrimination, ensure curriculum and materials are free from anti-Semitism and discrimination, increase district accountability for responding to complaints, strengthen and expand the uniform complaint process to include school board members and contractors, and establish a state-level anti-Semitism coordinator. In this age
Wait, let's stop the tape.
Polarization.
Okay, so she just listed out all of these things. Now, when we all first saw 715 on, I think it was Sunday, Mother's Day, we looked at it and it was like, well, these things already exist. I mean, you're going to expand the definition of, what this means. Like, we have so many protections already in place for civil rights, and it's Ed Code, what is it, 220, that covers national origin and gender, sex, and like you just can't discriminate against someone for who they are, no matter what it is. But it was the two or three things at the end there, right? So they're expanding the complaint process procedure, which I can promise you was, whether they didn't have enough people there or they were ignoring the complaints that were coming in that were about anti-Semitism, I don't know, but expanding that can only be helpful. There are a lot of complaints. We have to figure out why there are so many complaints. What's going on? Why is it so systemic? And then this new anti-Semitism, I don't know what she called it, coordinator, that's an interesting one. Okay, now this has been tried, I think, in other places. We'll see what happens with that, but almost like someone to take the lead on dealing with all of these issues that are specifically about this. When you have 3% of the population and 73% of the hate crimes, maybe you do need a person to kind of focus on that. And yes, separate from everything else that's going on.
And again, from my standpoint,
for the opposition that they don't like doing that, but 73% of hate crimes against one teeny tiny little group, like, I think that's unusual, right? So,
and again, from my standpoint, I'm just happy that we're having this conversation, because now we're able to focus on anti-Semitism and not ethnic studies. So that's a big step in the right direction.
School districts have to be stalwart in their responsibility to create safe and supportive environments where all children can learn and thrive. And it's up to us in the legislature to provide the tools that districts need to be able to do this. And we do recognize AB 17 is intent language, and it absolutely will become more defined in the coming weeks. I do want to reiterate that, disturbingly, there have been many misrepresentations about this bill, And unfortunately, many of those misrepresentations in and of themselves are tropes that the Jewish community has been subject to for decades. And the rhetoric used is yet another example of why we absolutely need a bill like this.
Oh, the irony.
The bill, as I mentioned, is much simpler. It's much more straightforward. AB 715 does one thing. It fights anti-Semitism in our K-12 schools. And I'll end by talking about the process with our Diversity Caucus colleagues, our sister colleagues. This bill is truly the result of deep and lengthy collaboration among the caucuses who understand that we have to respond to hate, to anti-Semitism with commitment, with strength, and with clarity. And recently, the chairs of the caucuses came together and published the following statement. They said, the California Legislative Diversity Caucuses have always prioritized solidarity, and we are firmly united in our commitment to combat hate and bigotry of all forms. In recent months, we have been alarmed by deeply troubling incidents of anti-Semitism in our K-12 public schools. This is not acceptable and cannot be normalized. Our caucuses will not stand idly by while any community is targeted by hate. Instead, we are working together to craft meaningful legislation to protect Jewish students in our classrooms, and we look forward to passing that legislation this year. And we'll have more to share about this effort in the coming weeks. And today is that more to share kind of day. So in closing, I want to say that I'm deeply grateful for the partnerships with our colleagues and look forward to together ensuring that every school district is a welcoming and affirming place for California's Jewish students and our entire multicultural student body. And so with that, I would like to turn over to our witnesses, David Bacarsley, Executive Director of the Jewish Public Affairs Committee of California, and Ella, a student who has come here from the Bay Area to share with you her experience.
Okay, maybe let's pause for a second before Ella speaks. She spoke beautifully, and it was so heartbreaking to watch that. But trying to work together and get that buy-in from all of the diversity caucuses for ethnic studies bills wasn't going anywhere for months and months and months and months. And I'm sure that there, a lot of the behind-the-scenes conversations were happening. But the fact that in 3 days, they were able to all agree. I mean, there was such consensus between the diversity caucuses and that this was a major issue that needed to be dealt with. To me, that is very affirming and something that we have not seen before. What we are used to getting is, oh, there's nothing to see here. Oh, it's just a political view. Oh, it's free speech. And they don't really mean that. There's a lot of that. And here it is in 2 or 3 days. I'm sure it took a lot, behind the scenes. You've got pretty much the entire spectrum of the diversity caucus saying, yes, this is a problem. Yes, we need to resolve it. No, this shouldn't be happening. And we're going to do something about it.
Absolutely.
Hallelujah.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's Ella in Santa Clara County and have lived there my whole life. Last year, I was a 7th grader in a public middle school in San Jose. October 7th, 2023 changed my life. From a happy middle schooler with many friends, I was reduced to loneliness and abuse. All my friends turned their backs on me. They called me the Jew. They yelled at me that I was a murderer and that Jews were terrorists. I was made fun of, harassed, and followed around when I spoke in Hebrew. None of this was something I did. I was the same child as before when they were my friends. They hated me because of my identity, my religion, and my parents' nationality. I did not say or do anything to deserve this. At first, I hoped that the school staff would help and protect me, but some teachers and the school board continued to say and do biased things that made it seem like Jews were bad people, giving additional fuel to the students who said those awful things about me. With my parents, we attempted to ask for help from the counselors, assistant principal, and principal. They did not take action. We submitted a UCP about the harassment I encountered. It took 4 months to get a response. That's 2 months after the legal deadline to respond. And that response didn't do anything to address the actual issue. As the weeks went by, the situation only got worse. Some days I had to stay home, I couldn't stand it, and I feared for my own safety. Finally, at the end of the semester, my parents withdrew me from the public school and enrolled me in a private Jewish school, Yavna. The fall semester of 2023 was when I lost all trust in peers, friendships, adults, and good intentions. I struggled to sleep at night and with my self-esteem. I ask you today to take action so other students won't go through the pain that I went through. Thank you.
Very powerful.
I mean, this girl is 14. I mean, imagine this was any other, I feel like a broken record saying this. Imagine any other minority, imagine any other group, saying something like this. The outrage, the absolute, like mountains would move in order to ensure that not a single additional student felt the way that she just described. And she was probably not even, touching the tip of the iceberg there, right?
Absolutely. And by the way, over the years, we have broadcast in California and in other states, but primarily in California, we have, Ella is fantastic for testifying here and for going to the Capitol and testifying. But we've heard also from even younger students in middle school experiencing the same.
Middle school. This is middle school, right? I mean, she was 7th grade, 7th and 8th grade, right? She's middle school right now. I mean, she's articulate and she sounds like a college student, but she's only 14 now. So this all started when she was 13, and I just. The gaslighting that was happening and the fact that she had to leave the school and the fact that so many, this was mentioned also before, is that in Oakland, you had more than 40 Jewish families removing their kids from public school because of what was going on, and no one was doing anything about it. So I guess better late than never. And it's not just since October 7th. This has been happening way before. It's just October 7th, just like everything just kind of blew up, for lack of a better term. But she was fantastic. And it breaks my heart, this 14-year-old girl who thought all of her friends were her friends until they weren't. And it does remind me of all of these stories you hear from what happens when people are othered and dehumanized, and what people are capable of doing to other people when they don't even see them as human beings.
Absolutely. Sure.
Oh.
Thank you, Ella, and thank you, Chair and members. My name is David Bocarsley, and I'm the Executive Director of JPAC, a coalition of nearly 40 major Jewish organizations across the state, and the proud sponsor of AB 715. You just heard Ella's story, a brave and painful reminder of the stark rise of bullying and harassment of Jewish students. This isn't happening in a vacuum. Students are being exposed to increasingly biased content and outright anti-Semitism in their schools. We've uncovered statements from schools and district leaders like, there are too many Jews, acknowledge your economic power, Jews are the oppressors, Jewish organizations are racist. Students internalize these messages and direct that judgment at their Jewish peers. And schools often have no training, no tools, and no accountability to respond. According to the DOJ, the Jewish community is now the second most targeted group in California, despite being just 3% of the population. And the ADL reports that anti-Semitic incidents in California's K-12 schools have increased 623% over the past decade, with a major spike since October 7th. Our community is deeply shaken. Many students no longer feel safe, and as we heard from Ella, they are unsafe. We've heard heartbreaking stories of students hiding their identities, skipping school, and parents pulling their kids out of public education altogether. And yet, when Jews speak up for our safety, we're often met with suspicion, as if protecting ourselves is political or somehow anti-someone else. We're accused of silencing others' voices, but it's simple. If Jews are flattened to a single negative stereotype, you're denying our diversity, our vulnerability, and our pain. That's a dangerous double standard reserved for the Jewish community alone, and it creates a harmful environment for our students. But addressing anti-Semitism is not a zero-sum game. It's additive. Because when anti-Semitism rises, it's never just Jews who suffer it. It fractures communities, it poisons school environments, and it makes all of our students less safe. AB 715 responds to that reality. Yes, it focuses on anti-Semitism, but it also creates tools to confront hate that targets other vulnerable communities. It builds empathy and understanding and solidarity, ensuring that no student is left unprotected. White nationalism and other hate movements are trying to divide us.
Stop the tape.
He forgot radical Islam. Love you, Bo Carsley, but you forgot radical Islam.
Now,
hey, Nicole.
Right up until that moment, it was like, yes, yes, yes. And then I was like, wait, what? The Combat Anti-Semitism Movement, CAM, recently, I think it was a couple months ago, maybe, they came out with a, they do research and report and polling and all this kind of stuff. A lot of the big orgs do that. And what they saw, and I wish I had the pie chart, the source, like where is the anti-Semitism coming from? And, they had, everything from far right to, neo-Nazis, and then, I can't remember, like there was a few, so it went all the way from like the far right all the way to the far left and kind of everything in between, right? And they also had like jihadism and stuff. And what you saw was, if the pie was like this, you have like this out of the pie is the far left. And then you have white nationalism was like the sliver. It was
it exists. I mean, it exists.
It definitely exists.
But to ignore the radical left, I think is
I mean, it was like,
And by the way, I mean, isn't it like, can I do this? Isn't it like, it's like these people, by the way, that's the source of the anti-Semitism.
Yeah, it's at that point right there that he made, it was just
Coming
like,
together to combat anti-Semitism and hate is how we fight back. Many of you know that last week, 600 concerned Jewish community members and allies came to this building to demand action. AB 715 is how we turn that call into change. We're proud that this bill was shaped by the leaders of the diversity caucuses. It really reflects a historic partnership and a shared moral clarity. We hope you'll join them. I respectfully urge your vote.
I mean, I do think that the 600 people did go for the for that, but they went to lobby for the ethnic studies bill.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how they squared that circle.
So now they said that they want the ethnic studies bill in order to, ensure that the bad stuff wasn't getting it. It was kind of like a roundabout way to do it, but
beating around the policy bush, frankly.
Right.
All right. So basically, guys, what we're looking at again, this is a policy, what's called a policy hearing in the Assembly Education Committee. The proponents of the bill have just completed their presentation. And so now we're going to shift gears into what they call the Me Too's, or the people who will come up and speak in support of the bill and then also speak in opposition to the bill. So we're going to skip all that. We looked at that in the other clip in the beginning, but for now we're going to carry on. We're going to jump ahead, and we will hear more from the opposition.
Okay. Are we going back to the?
We'll go. Because I think we're going to go to.
Reminder: please keep your comments limited to your name, affiliation, and your position on the bill.
Please, 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 we strongly oppose this bill.
Okay, so this was actually cut. Yeah, so we skipped over all that, but we will go back to the public comments because that's going to be the dessert part of this meeting. The meat and potatoes part is the conversations that the legislators were having about the substance of the bill, and that's where the real, I guess, work is done. The real legislative work is done, is the questions and the playing devil's advocate. Are we covering the bases? Does this fix the problem? That sort of thing. And the process by which a new bill, a piece of legislation, gets approval to move on from one committee into the larger conversation. So not just in this committee, but also the broader.
And just so viewers understand, in the Assembly Education Committee, I believe there are 9 members, which means you need 5 votes to get out. All 9 but 2 are Democrats. There are 2 Republicans on the committee. All right. And so now that the presentation portion of the bill is completed, we skipped ahead. Now we're moving into the Q&A portion where members of the committee will ask bill authors and supporters
questions. Yeah,
and also opponents too. They'll ask the opponents questions as well. So we're going to jump into that section now.
Seeing no further public comments in opposition, I'd like to invite the witnesses who have opinions.
Yes.
And you'll have an opportunity to be called back.
Or jump ahead.
Drive. We appreciate the author's time recently to meet with us earlier on 1468.
So for people to understand, this is the lobbyist or the representative from the California School Board Association, CSBA. Oops, I might have muted it here. There we go.
Saw the language in 715. CSBA wasn't able to take a position since the bill was just introduced, but we wanted to respectfully share our serious concerns with the bill that will likely result in CSBA taking an opposed position on the bill.
That will likely result in them taking an opposed position, right? So he's sort of saying, we haven't decided yet, but here's our concerns of why we might probably more than likely not support it.
And so people understand who this is and who he represents. This is the association that advocates on behalf of the elected school board members of the state of California.
Yes.
Why they need their own association, they don't advocate for themselves and their own constituents, I'm not sure. But he's going to make a case somewhat
But why
in
he's
opposition.
probably going to oppose a bill that says that, being anti-Semitic to Jews in K through 12 is not a good idea. So
Education Code 244 is problematic. Boards approve and adopt agenda items. They do not act to allow specific materials used by teachers.
To be clear, what he is saying there is super important. Current law says that school board members adopt and approve. There is a new term or new word that is used in this bill that says allow. And what this bill is looking to do is to close the loophole that allows teachers to freely express themselves and their political points of view in the classroom and absolve the school board members who are elected to prevent that kind of behavior from happening. And so what the state is trying to do now is step in and say, we want to hold those actors accountable for that activity, and their association is opposing it. Just so
now this is one of the biggest pieces that we in the school district, parents in the school district, are dealing with on a daily basis. You go, you make your comments at the school board meeting, and they say, well, we adopted this curriculum. We don't know what the teachers are using in the classroom. So, and parents are like, but you're like, if this was a company, you have no oversight over your employees in your district. So you don't know what they're showing to the kids. And then when parents come in and say, can you show me what you're using in the classroom? They're like, well, we don't really want to share that because we don't want transparency. And so parents are getting this double runaround where the school board is saying, well, we approved it, this curriculum, don't know if it's being used. Let's say it's great curriculum, don't know if it's being used, have no way to control it. And the teachers are saying, yeah, I know that the school board is the one supposed to be creating the curriculum, but I don't like it. I'm going to use something that I like from Al Jazeera and, whatever, Hamas.
Yeah, you'll hear moving forward words like censorship and open debate and these kinds of things. As we go further into this hearing, remember, we are not talking about colleges and universities. We're talking about K through 12 public schools. Teachers do not have a right to free expression in these environments. They're there to teach what the state asks them to teach and what their local educational agency asks them to teach. So again, bear that in mind, separate that out. We're not in colleges and universities where we're talking about academic freedom. That doesn't exist in K through 12.
That is a real fallacy that it exists in K through 12. Teachers are not allowed to teach the children what their opinion is as fact. That's ed code. It's a law. It already exists. We don't need new laws, but they're not allowed to do that. And so what your personal politics is has no place in classrooms. And that is not a violation of free speech, even though the opposition constantly talks about it as if it was, but it's not.
If a district doesn't directly disallow, for example, a specific resource that might be used, then a district could be subject to a complaint that asserts that the district de facto allowed it.
Correct.
Yes.
Exactly.
If a district is providing resources to teachers that Hamas wrote, then the district is responsible for giving resources to the teachers that Hamas wrote. That's the point of having a school board.
Or by the way, even if the teachers didn't, or if the school board didn't provide it, they're still responsible. That's why they exist. That's the purpose of their existence.
This opens districts up to a whole new category of complaints and puts boards in a position to micromanage what's happening.
No, it puts you in the position to do your job and to
have oversight and accountability to ensure that, yes, God forbid.
The planned expansion of the UCP is also problematic. Board members are locally elected and accountable to their communities. It's unclear what the intent is.
Local electeds are accountable to their communities, but they're also accountable to the law, state and federal.
In instances where a complaint is appealed to the CDE, this would set a troubling precedent.
And bear in mind, he's opposing this portion of the what he calls an expansion of UCP. The model right now is that there is no responsibility. The school board members are not being held responsible at all. And frankly, the only way to hold them responsible is through elections, and even that hasn't even turned out to be effective.
That's a whole other sort of can of worms. But but let's say, okay, you're looking at elected officials at all levels, like you said, federal levels. So what if a member of Congress breaks the law? They shouldn't be held accountable. Like, this whole way of thinking is all about like not taking accountability, not being responsible for what you have signed up to be responsible for. So that was his problem with this, and why he was, quote, likely not to support it.
And elevating the department over locally elected officials. What remedies would CDE have the authority to pursue in response to these complaints? We don't believe this tool is designed for this use. There are already tools available at the local and state level to resolve many of the issues that these provisions attempt to address. We have other concerns as well, but wanted to share some of them with you today. I'm happy to provide more information and answer questions on these issues, and CSB is committed to working with the authors as the bill moves forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So he's willing to work with the authors, but provided that school board members not be held accountable for what's being taught in the school districts that they oversee.
Correct.
Okay. Noted. Next.
All right, so this is the head of the California Teachers Association. What's his name? Is it David Goldberg?
It's Goldberg. Please, with a grain of salt, Goldberg.
Mr. Chair and members, my name is David Goldberg. I'm the president of the California Teachers Association and a bilingual elementary school teacher from Los Angeles. I want to, start out by...
Bilingual elementary school from Los Angeles, also a member of UTLA, I believe, the infamous...
UTLA.
Sharing the values we all share. And anti-Semitism, I think we all agree, has no place in our school or in any other corner of our society, and that every child deserves to feel safe in school. And as we should provide these safe and nurturing spaces for all students, we recognize that is consistent and intentional work. And educators dedicate our lives to the work. We think about how to best reach our students and help them achieve their dreams well into the evening hours, even when we're with our own families. We're in constant dialogue with parents and communities about how to best navigate these complex complexions. And anti-Semitism, and frankly, all forms of hatred, are pernicious and often learned behaviors. And addressing and eradicating will take all of us working together in consistent dialogue in every corner of our state. But with a federal administration that sows divisions on all levels of academia and seeks to drive a wedge between...
So again, so this is the California Teachers Association, and he is a public school teacher, and he is talking about a federal administration, the current federal administration, that is
harming his ability to.
So the federal government is engaging in certain enforcement action at the university level, and he is touching on that. Again, has no bearing on K through 12, has nothing to do with secondary or early education.
In communities, we must also work together to protect young people's rights to live and breathe and engage and be passionate and debate about the future of our society. Young
college students.
He's talking about college students here, right? I mean,
people are being targeted for trying to figure out this world we live in and their own political views in campuses across our country.
Campuses. We're not talking about campuses.
He's in the wrong meeting. That's the problem. Like, he thought he was going to a campus hearing, and he's in a K through 12. But
he's also the president of the California Teachers Association. I'm very confused, Mr. Goldberg.
Country, and this isn't okay. We need ongoing discussion to work through this dangerous era, not a bill that in effect provides...
And by the way, I would argue, Mr. Goldberg, that the CTA, as far as it relates to K through 12 education in California, is much more dangerous to our students than the current federal administration, with all due respect to all the actors.
Incomplete solutions and targets and penalizes educators and creates confusions. Teachers
Okay.
should never be scapegoated.
Sorry, go ahead.
He's conflating a lot of things here, right? A bill about anti-Semitism is not how we resolve issues, because this is going to prevent teachers from doing whatever they want to do and not having consequence for it. And he is not happy about that.
Right.
Yeah.
For addressing controversial issues in the classroom. Critical thinking and open dialogue is essential to education. In fact, I've received hundreds of emails in the last day and a half from educators across the state that have deep concerns about the proposed language and how it'll impact our efforts. I have received messages.
What efforts?
Does he mean the efforts to discriminate against the Jewish students? Because it will affect that. It will affect his ability to do that if implemented correctly.
It feels like here we're starting to get into this space. He's easing into it. He says they're trying to provide a safe and nurturing environment, and you'll see
when do that if we pass a bill claiming anti-Semitism is bad.
Well, and then one of his members will speak later about this, and you'll see exactly what they mean when they talk about nurturing and safe, and the kinds of efforts that they have with regard to our students
across the state with deep concerns and confusion about the intentions of this legislation, and also what
the intention of the legislation should not be confusing, Mr. Goldberg. The intention is to protect our Jewish and immigrant Jewish communities throughout the state of California, or those perceived to be Jewish. It's very simple. And the teachers, the activist teachers in particular, are a major part of the problem. And one of the things that I would like to know and understand, and what I am confused about, is what the California Teachers Association would like to do to address those problems in particular from their membership.
Impacts will be in the months and years to come. One consistent concern is how the language as written could actually have unintended consequences, including giving more power to extremists on school boards to threaten, intimidate, and control teachers and push harmful agendas into our classrooms. So we stand ready to work on any anti-hate legislation writ large, and I thank you for allowing me to testify today.
By the way, notice it's anti-hate. We are happy to work on any anti-hate legislation.
Just not this one.
But there always seems to be a Jewish exception.
Look, All Lives Mattered this at the beginning when he first started to speak. And this is something I do not understand how it is continued to be allowed. Yeah. He is saying that the language of the bill is dangerous and that it will prevent teachers from
I guess free expression of
what? It will prevent teachers from discriminating against Jewish students or allowing discrimination against them in their classrooms by other means. So they don't like that. They do not want any limitations on what they are going to be allowed to say, and they certainly don't want any accountability over what they say and what content they bring into the schools. That is what he's saying. And we dealt with this a long time ago when we brought a resolution condemning anti-Semitism, and we actually did include IRA. This bill doesn't even include it, which was what we were frustrated with. Like, hey, this is amazing. How come you're not talking about IRA? Because you got to have that in there. And we were frustrated. Here he is saying this bill that we thought didn't go far enough because it didn't define anti-Semitism. He's saying this is super bad. And I've gotten hundreds of emails from teachers all over California who think this is going to prevent them from doing what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Scary. Yeah.
Cool.
Fantastic.
The timing of this, and CTA, we're a big organization that deliberates and sometimes.
And Mary is asking, a bill meant to protect, here, let's put it on the screen, a bill meant to protect Jewish students is bad for teachers. For anti-Semitic.
Yep. They think it is. They would like carte blanche on doing and saying whatever they want about Jews without a bill that has oversight over that. That's what he's saying.
We do not have yet an opposed position. But this bill at this point, if our concerns are not likely addressed, we're likely to oppose AB 715.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Maybe they should have called it an anti-racist bill.
Just to be fair, to give a broad range of opinions, if there's anyone who hasn't already spoken, public comments for those that don't have a position but want to express.
This is with ACLU California. Very collaborative staffer.
Thoughts around this being a question.
Oh wait, let's go back. She had great questions.
Okay, so now we are moving. So that was the CSBA and the CTA spoke about they're kind of in between. They're not sure yet what position they'll take. They will likely oppose the bill. Unfortunately, maybe not.
We insist on maintaining the accountability piece of it. They will oppose, right? Yeah. So presumably, if we take away accountability and oversight, they're fine to because they know that they won't get in trouble. But so long as accountability is part of this, so long as there's going to be maybe the role that would be created to coordinate all this, and they're not interested. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
and also we'll see, again, they will sharpen their argument through subsequent testimony in opposition and through their promotion of creating a national origin exception to discriminatory.
Yeah.
So, all right, so now we're going into the Q&A portion. First, we'll hear from Assemblymember Patel.
Dr. Patel.
I'm going to open with a question. Want to first express some thoughts around this being a very emotional topic. We are trying to keep students safe in school. As a former school board trustee in a suburban school district with a very diverse population, I understand the concerns being brought up here in this room today from the witness at the stands today, who is a brave student to come forward. It's not easy to do this. I appreciate your civic engagement. It's to be commended. And to those in the audience also who have expressed your support, opposition, and in-between viewpoints, it's great to see this much civic engagement on such an important topic. I do have some questions for the authors. I know this was a long process to get here. Lots of compromise have already been shared. It's a collaborative effort between our ethnic caucuses. We've been working to try to get it right. It's not easy to get legislation this weighty exactly right on the first salvo. So I want to send appreciation to the authors for working with all of our ethnic caucuses, making progress towards trying to get it right for everybody.
Legislation this weighty, that anti-Semitism is bad and we should protect Jewish students in K through 12 is weighty.
Yep. All right, let's see where she goes from here.
So in the room today, we heard some concerns, genuine concerns that this bill, AB 715, could be used to suppress certain kinds of viewpoints on campus.
Yeah, so again, this bill could be used to suppress certain viewpoints. Maybe I'll
campus, she said.
I'll nudge it back a second here.
AB 715 could be used to suppress certain kinds of viewpoints on campus, in the classroom. How would you respond to those concerns? And can you explain the intent and how the bill is designed to try to protect students from harassment, all students from harassment, frankly, without silencing students from harassment, all students from harassment, frankly, without silencing legitimate academic debate in an academic classroom setting?
So this is where, again, she's conflating a university setting with a school classroom setting. There is no such thing as academic debate in a K through 12 environment. It is an educational environment. It is
Which is interesting because the beginning of this school year, she was still a school board member in the Poway Unified School District. So not even that long ago, she was still there. So yeah.
And again, so all these concerns about free expression and debate, academic, we're not talking about academics. We're talking about primary and secondary education. And I will say, Zabur and Adis answer this phenomenally.
Flawlessly.
First of all, let me start by talking a little bit about sort of the assertion and the concern that that this is intended to silence educators and silence legitimate academic debate. First of all, we deeply value teachers. We recognize that they are professionals who profoundly are dedicated to the service of our students. This bill will put protections in place that will ensure that material taught in schools is balanced, fair, factual, and won't harm Jewish or any other students. We're not looking to micromanage teachers in the classroom, but I think it's fair to say that that when we're talking about our schools, not everything goes in the classroom. I mean, imagine if someone decided to teach that
it's not only fair to say, it's the law.
Correct.
Or imagine someone introducing elementary school kids to racist talking points. Those would clearly be inappropriate, and there would.
And by the way, what he's describing, racist talking points,
it's happening,
are exactly what is happening to Jewish students.
Be no debate about that. So this is looking at the kinds of protections that are sort of similar to make sure that we actually have a safe and supportive school climate for Jewish and all students, and that is really what the intention of this bill is. There's a lot that's been said about this bill that it doesn't have anything to do with what's written in the intent language. A lot of assertions were made that, frankly, we haven't actually gotten to the point of actually negotiating the operative language with other members of the diversity caucuses, with the stakeholders that are in the community, and all of that is still to occur now. And I'll I'll leave it to Assemblymember Addis to respond
All
to
right, so Burr lays it up,
whether or not this bill
and Adis
prevents
will
discussion of
answer.
Palestine and Israel in the classroom, which I think people have
It's
asserted
fantastic.
today that it would prohibit any kind of instruction in that area.
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. And I too want to thank all who have come here to express their thinking and their views on our public education system, and particularly those who have come to say that they too are against anti-Semitism and against any form of hate in our schools. And I also would like to welcome the opposition and the tweeners to continue in conversation with us, as we've done for almost 2 years now, with a variety of folks that have deep connection and emotion to this issue. And it's clear that there is a lot of pain in this room. There's a lot of pain when it comes to these discussions. And there are also very rich and important discussions that we need to have in our schools. I remind all of us that we're working with K-12 students, number one, and that we should be cognizant of the age range of children that we are working with, and that when we're discussing challenging or potentially controversial topics, which I think is important as children learn and grow, that we have to do that in a way, it's really our charge to do that in a way that continues to make every single child feel welcomed and affirmed in the classroom, regardless of what the topic is. There's nothing in this bill that would prevent somebody from having a difficult conversation around any current event that is happening anywhere in the world. And in fact, some of our state standards do call for that. But you have to do that in a way that is welcoming, affirming, and creates a safe and supportive space. And I will say that we heard from a student just now who said that she has been called a murderer, that she has been called the Jew, that she has experienced horrific things both in the classroom and on the schoolyard, to the extent that she had to leave that school and go to a school that she and her family felt like they could be safe to be at.
A Jewish
heard
school.
These stories from from family after family, from district after district, from every single corner of the state of California, where children and families are saying that it's one thing to discuss a conflict or a controversial issue. It's absolutely another thing to target children. And I think we need to be clear, and our diversity caucus chairs and our diversity caucuses have certainly been clear in saying that any form of hate directed at a child in our school system is not okay, and that we need to have a strong and immediate response to that. And I do think that our schools need tools to do that. Our school boards and our school districts need tools to do that. And that's what this legislation would do.
Perfect.
So with that in mind,
the fact that they have to keep saying it and to keep reiterating that there are already laws that are in existence about, we talk about a lot in the district level when you talk about controversial issues. Imagine for a minute that you have a teacher who wants to talk about the current administration's policy on immigration. And what happens is that we say, well, we want to make sure that we talk about that in a balanced way. And so you want to give both sides of this conversation. Now, I would hope that that teacher is a upper class high school teacher and not a fourth grade or kindergarten teacher. But imagine if this teacher came in and was saying horrible racist things about, people coming in from Mexico being fill in the blank here with, bad, names and all kinds of things. And there being people in the opposition saying, no, you should let them do that. They should call Mexican people coming into this country horrible things. That's free speech. So that's what the opposition is doing. And what she's saying here is it actually doesn't matter what you're talking about, whether you're talking about the Israel, what's going on in Israel. If you're talking about anything, you should do it in a way that is fair and balanced. And that is the law. So this is just strengthening the law, which the opposition does not want, because that's not what they do.
And as we get a little further along, you will see a stark contrast between the very clear legal standard laid out by Zabur and Adis and the desire for, frankly, anarchy in the classroom pushed by the CTA and one or two of his members who happen to be testifying.
What ways do existing bullying and anti-discrimination policies that our school districts have, the tools that they currently have, in what ways do they fall short specifically in creating these safe, affirming, inclusive environments for all students, particularly for those facing ethnic, ancestral-based religious harassment across the board from all categories? How are we falling short that we need this bill?
Great question.
Well, I think
that is the question.
Yeah.
Right. That is the question.
What we have heard from families, particularly families who have experienced these situations, is that they aren't listened to, they aren't believed, that the response has been lengthy, delayed, or not at all, and that they simply haven't been able to get the help that they need. And so this bill would be more explicit in identifying religion and nationality, identifying discrimination around religion and nationality, and then giving tools to be able to respond to that within a timely manner, specifically around anti-Semitism, but also around other forms of discrimination.
And I would add to that the UCP system is something that's in place now that already governs this area. So it's not that it's expanding it, although this bill would make clear when it's appropriate to file UCP complaints. But I think we're looking at ways of strengthening to make sure that when a parent files a UCP complaint, it just doesn't sit there for months and months and months. And so that is something that we're hopeful will be some strengthening of the law. I know that one of the comments that was made by CSBA was they raised concerns about the bill. And what I'd like to point out is the concerns they raised about the bill are an existing law. Those are not parts that we changed in this bill. So that's already the area that you voiced concerns about are not about this bill. Those are already in existing law.
Right. Here's how he wobbled a little bit there,
Cheryl,
right?
more
A little
questions.
bit.
Looking at implementation, should this bill make it through and across the governor's desk, can you give me some examples of what you intend for remedies that would be available to the Department of Education in response to a UCP complaint, specifically against a school board member or even a contractor?
Solutions oriented. I really like that.
I mean, right now we're in discussions about the bill. You've seen that it's intent language. It's absolutely our intent to get the bill more defined and to keep it moving. And that'll be, part of the discussions as we move forward will be what that looks like specifically.
And I would say that we've had communications from stakeholders on all sides. I think we do need to talk to CSBA, to the teachers unions. There are members of the community that have actually submitted a host of things that we want to look at carefully. And we also want to make sure that as we do this, we're consulting with stakeholders and with the other primary authors to make sure that what we do is something that that everyone is aligned on.
Completely understood. I think this is where implementation is the key. And having been a school board trustee, we definitely want policies that are feasible and implementable. Otherwise, that creates a lot of heartache. So another one for looking at school board specifically as we look at implementation, should this pass, what kind of increased legal jeopardy could a school district face? Are we talking about legal penalties, et cetera?
But I think, again, what we're hearing from families, just to get back to the core of the issue, is what we're hearing from families is that their complaints are simply not responded to, or they're not responded to in a timely manner. So, the goal is to be able to address anti-Semitism when it occurs. The unfortunate situation, and I just, I've invited our colleagues from CSBA to join us in addressing anti-Semitism that has occurred at the school board level. I would love for them to join us and just say that that's not okay. But the unfortunate situation is that anti-Semitism has happened at the school board level. It's happened sort of district-wide in some situations. And that's the thing that we need to get at. How that happens and the very specifics of that, we're still in conversations around how this all gets formulated. And I'll say again that we would love the input of, the opposition as well as supporters to form this policy as we move forward.
Okay, stop here for a second. Even though I know Darshana Patel.
Yeah, that was a key point that she good.
Yes, and that was a big one too, right? It's so the consequences for ignoring and continuing this discriminatory practice against the Jewish students. What happened was that there was no mechanism for accountability, and it fell onto parents to carry the load of figuring out how to enforce laws that already exist in their districts, because the school board trustees or the superintendents or the state superintendent or the state AG weren't enforcing it for us. I don't know how many parents have come to us and said, how can this be legal? And our response is, It's not. And then you go through this whole process. The parents have to, like, this full-time job keeping school districts abiding by the law. Just like to clear the air here, like it is a full-time job. And every day, even if you have gone back to the school district time after time and shown them how many times they have broken the law, they're going to do it again tomorrow. And so, with all due respect to Assemblywoman Patel, because she does have this experience of being on the school board this school year, when you're talking about all of this stuff, the main key point is accountability.
Yep.
Who has accountability? If you've got the top spot in the district, you are the elected official. It is your job to represent your constituents, and your constituents are not the teachers. They are the parents and the students who go to that school, who trust you to do the right thing fiscally and follow the laws, where non-discrimination applies to everybody in exactly the same way. That's all this says. And the frustration, I've seen this now 3 times and I'm frustrated about it again. Patel's questions are fabulous. And the reason this bill has to be brought this way is because no one is taking accountability. Not the school district, not the trustees, not the superintendent, not the state super, like everybody who is in a position to be accountable and protect the students, not doing it.
Yeah.
Not doing
it. So I do want to say that we have some good, not all teachers are bad, right? We have some good teachers, and we have some good teachers I know that are watching now, absolutely. And again, like, this is where we need you guys, and also trustees. We know that there are trustees watching too, and school board members watching as well. We need the good apples to speak out and speak up within your unions or within your associations to advocate for your students. You'll see some of the arguments unfold a little bit more detailed as we carry on, but we really do need that support. And I think it's important that, again, Adis, this is what I want to highlight from Assembly Member Adis. She asks the CSBA, the California School Board Association, what is your solution? Join us. Again, ICAN strongly opposed 1468, but we didn't just oppose. We provided what we felt was a constructive path forward.
Yeah.
We expect the same from CTA and CSBA as well. There's clearly a problem, and I hope that they acknowledge it. They haven't yet in this testimony, as far as I've seen. I don't know if they've done so publicly otherwise, but they just said it should be addressed. And this is something that I appreciate that Assemblymember Adis brought up.
Respond to, yeah.
The current state of 715, my understanding is that you are completely open and willing to work with the concerns that are being raised here today to make sure we do get this policy correct as it moves forward. My hope is that we create learning environments where all kids feel safe and included and able to obtain a high quality public education. This is what we hope to do in California. A free and public education for all children in California is in our Constitution. We want to make that a reality here. So I look forward to seeing you working with the opposition to make sure we get to a point where the bill is feasible and implementable. And I appreciate that this is intent language. As a freshman board member or assembly member here, I understand that sometimes we do let things move because they need to move, but that there's still work to be done. And I acknowledge that there's still work to be done on this bill, but I'm willing to let it go through at this time with a commitment from the authors that they will continue to work on it as it goes to the next committee and the committee after that. I will get another chance to vote on this formally. This is just to get it out of committee so that you can continue to work on it.
It's important to yeah. So let's explain quickly. That was a very long explanation to say that she recognizes that the teachers' unions have enormous political power in California, and that she is voting to let this bill through only in this very far from final state to allow the debate to continue.
Process to continue, and yes, what she is doing there is very, very, very not so subtly explaining why she's doing something that the teachers union, whose endorsements she had over the many years, is going to be very upset with her for saying that hating Jews because they're Jews is bad. And good for her. I'm actually okay. She's letting them know publicly that she's going to be doing this, and she wants them to be clear and understand why. It was awkward.
I do want to say, I see in the chat that someone mentioned being vocal with UTLA. I agree with you. That's probably an exception. So
I think that's the vast majority of teachers, the really good teachers and the really good school board members. They're coming up against all this hate themselves when they speak out. So yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And just to clarify, so the change that the bill is making to Education Code 244 is new. It is adding the word allow in that instance.
Here's the school board guy
we're
again.
saying that does significantly change how districts are how they could be
held accountable. Say it.
A complaint that's filed pursuant to that, it's not clear because districts don't currently allow specific materials to be used in the classroom. They do adopt curriculum, they do adopt instructional materials, but they're not looking at specific titles that are being used by teachers. They're not looking at teacher syllabus. This would appear to—
they have no idea what's happening in classrooms.
Boards in that position to have to allow or disallow, because if they don't disallow, then we're concerned that there could be complaints filed that would assert that a board allowed something because it didn't disallow it. So we're concerned about opening up that.
Tell me you're guilty without telling me you're guilty. Okay.
And again, think of the scenario that he's basically describing. Because to disallow something, you have to be aware of it. And also to allow something, you have to be aware of it. So what he's trying to do is really try to, as you said, Nicole, no accountability for the school board members to be accountable to the law. So
and that accountability and that allowing and knowing that something is happening is where they are. That's the gap that they are living in, because as all these parents are coming into, talking to the teacher, then the principal, then the superintendent, following all of the regulations and the processes and the rules, and they're letting all of the stakeholders, the administrators, know that this is happening, and yet it is continuing to happen, is exactly because school board members are not being held accountable. And so if they don't do anything about it, nothing will happen to them. And if they do something about it, then the teachers unions will pull their support. So, it's a political decision. We're not going to protect the kids because we're going to lose our political war chest. And he's saying, we'd like to keep it that way. Thank you very much.
And those complaints. The last thing I'll add too is that under 1078, around
1078 is the textbook bill that was passed last year.
There is an opportunity for complaints to be filed directly with the superintendent. So if there is, and there are timelines for a response on these complaints now. So there are options available locally. And then under the UCP, CDE can act on those complaints before the district acts on those complaints.
All right, thank you, Mr. Goldberg.
You just don't want them to act.
This may be the first time the school board is speaking in favor of the teachers union speaking in favor of the school board. But just to take his point a little bit farther, because that is a significant change. That is a significant change, and if that happens with school boards, you can imagine then the pressure being put on classroom educators, right?
God forbid.
They're saying,
God forbid they be held accountable for what they're teaching the students. God forbid.
That becomes weaponized. You can see how very easily that would happen. Secondly, as I point out in my comments, you can imagine this is happening across the state where we have extremist school boards. You can imagine what they would and would not allow in classrooms, would in fact deny students an education on a well-rounded stuff, weaponize this language.
How about the teachers who are weaponizing their ideology in the classrooms against the students? That's also a pandemic that's happening around the state.
And this proposed law to make sure that students don't get a well-rounded education around certain issues that that extremist school board would consider controversial.
Could you give an example?
I'm sorry.
Nonsense, totally. And by the way,
this guy just.
Yeah. So the chair of the committee is about to ask him, give me an example of an extremist
school board member who, is going to be holding you accountable, teacher.
It should be super easy for the CTA. Let's see what he says.
Yeah. No, maybe I shouldn't. but I mean, it's happening across the state, and you see.
He says, no, maybe I shouldn't. Okay.
See how there's fights about a bunch of different issues across the state, around issues, whether a whole range of issues. And now you're telling school boards that they are responsible for what is allowed. You can see how that could be weaponized.
Responsible for what's allowed. That's their job.
How they would use.
So wait a second. You're telling me that someone who ran for an election to hold a voting seat on a school board to be responsible for what happens in the school board shouldn't be held responsible for what's happening in the school district?
Yeah,
probably.
Because that's how it works.
But they would use that tool to then really aggressively push what happens in classrooms. No, so this impacts both school boards and classroom educators.
Mr. Zuber. So first of all, I wanted to just clarify that when I indicated that all the changes that were referred to, all the comments related to 244, I was referring to 244B, which of course is the area that wasn't changed. That's existing law. The witness is accurate that the change to 244A is a change, which actually goes to the issue of making sure that what is being used in the classroom is something that is a product of what folks are focused on when you're filing a UCP complaint. Our goal is really not to target teachers. I think have been in 2 years of working on this and in dialogue with the teachers unions and all the education associations. We've been very focused on and have pulled back on a number of strategies when we thought that they might be weaponized in ways that are inappropriate in the classroom. And we're very, very sympathetic to those kinds of issues and looking forward to working with the teachers unions on those issues. But I think the bottom line is we can't have school boards basically walking away from what happens in the classroom based upon whether or not they technically approved the curriculum or they didn't. And so we've got to find ways of making sure that what students experience in the classroom is something that we have an ability to grapple with, especially when what's happening in the classroom may be anti-Semitic or may cause a hostile school climate.
With the permission of the chair, I'd love for the opposition to get a chance to respond to some of these comments.
Oh, you're this guy. I cannot wait till we get to this guy.
If the authors would like to continue, I can wait till after the author speech.
Okay, Ms. Addis.
Thank you.
So Don, Assembly Member Adis is going to also respond to the same question about allowing material into the classroom.
Respectfully, I disagree. School boards ultimately are in charge of what happens in the school district. They are the ultimate deciders. But more specifically, 244A is very specific. It says it would subject to pupil to unlawful discrimination pursuant to Section 220 of Ed Code. So 244A is not about controversial topics. It's not about just picking and choosing. It's not for school boards that just somehow decide a curriculum isn't right. It's very specifically aligned to Ed Code 220, which is very much about discrimination in the classroom. And so, we just have to be very specific. We do want to continue to work with opposition to make sure that we are not doing things that are going to open the door unknowingly to really horrible things that we have also heard some school boards do. But that's not what this section of this bill is about.
Perfect.
Thank you. Gabriel Kahn, teacher at Life Academy.
Okay, so now we're listening to a gentleman named Gabriel Kahn, who is a teacher in Oakland, OUSD. And how many?
Mass, I believe.
How many Jewish families had to leave Oakland?
More than 40.
More than 40 Jewish families, as far as reports say, left OUSD, Oakland Unified School
Oakland,
District.
because it was so it was so horrifically anti-Semitic and so discriminatory and so toxic that parents could not in good conscience leave their children in this public school district. They left en masse, and it made national mainstream news, which the Jewish community is not really used to making, but it made mainstream national news because of how pervasive it was. Now, this guy is a teacher and in elementary school, and he teaches math. And he has a lot of opinions about all of this, which he is going to share in the most maddening clip yet.
He has a few maddening clips.
In Oakland, California. That wasn't easy for me to do to interrupt. And so I would have waited and deferred.
I'm going to skip some of his chatter.
Yeah, he's a lot of nervous chatter.
A bit of a chatter. So we're going to.
But I was reminded by one of my students last week while we were at a board meeting last month.
Oh wait, this is good actually.
Who will? I was waiting to speak. One of my students said, "What are you waiting for? If you don't speak for us, who will?" Right. And so that's the energy that I'm here with. I'm here with the energy of Oakland students who appreciate maturity in the conversations and the resources that we give them to engage with critical conversations.
I don't want this guy. If I had kids in public school, I wouldn't want this guy to give any of my kids, and I frankly don't think he should have access to any children.
If anybody is interested in seeing what kind of a guy this is, you should just go to Twitter and look him up. His last name is spelled Kahn, and just look at what he tweets about. It is all about, save Arab American ethnic studies. He retweets pretty much anything that CARE and If Not Now, and he's so in favor of all of the protests and the encampments. I mean, he is like super into it, big time ethnic studies guy. And somehow he is the main representative of the opposition. I guess not somehow, he is the exact persona of the opposition to a bill that says anti-Semitism is a bad thing. This is who he is. I am so offended by his cosplay use of the kippah. And listen, this is a free country. He can wear whatever he wants, etc. But to go onto his Twitter and see who he is. This guy is teaching elementary school math. Roll the tape.
Well, now he says he teaches humanities, so maybe he wasn't that great at math.
Obviously.
All right, we'll roll the tape.
Luckily enough for us, the Ed Code already does protect against anti-Semitism. We don't have to label it separate and apart from other forms of discrimination. It's
so what he's saying here is technically correct, right? Is that anti-Semitism certainly is not allowed in, or it's not permissive to be discriminatory towards Jews in public schools or in other settings. But what we're talking about here is, and he, again, Nicole, as you said, he's the prime example of the kind of person who preys on people. And I would actually call him, in my opinion, he appears in the way he describes his activities here in this hearing. He appears to be like an ideological predator in the schools. I mean, and just look at the way, or listen to the way he makes his argument.
Protected under discrimination on the basis of religion. It's protected on the basis of discrimination on ethnicity. And we could go back and forth about whether Judaism is an ethnicity or a religion and still not come to an answer. We hear all the time, 3 Jews, 4 opinions, right? Oh, I'm sorry, maybe that's not anti-Semitism. So these conversations continue to happen, and they happen in safe classrooms all over this state with trusting teachers who have their students in mind. In addition to that, I was heartbroken to hear the testimony of somebody, of the young student who was here, who was called, I did not write it down, I'm sorry, but there were many pejoratives that are definitely anti-Semitic, right? And what I heard when I heard those statements is a need for the education that we would provide, if allowed, to talk about the difference between Judaism and Zionism.
Bingo.
Oh, hell no. That is absolutely not going to happen.
We'll have to clip this and highlight this. This guy has no bearing, no place to talk about the difference between Judaism and Zionism, or to talk about Zionism at all whatsoever. And again, look at the predatory way he says, we create a nurturing environment. We create this space.
Parents must trust us to have those conversations with the students who we know want to have that conversation with us.
And listen to the psychopathic, disgusting way that this guy describes parts of the state of Israel. He describes it as an ethno-state later on in the hearing. So can you imagine, I'll preface it now, and I'll say it again later. And again, this is a long stream. I know it's almost 9 o'clock, so we'll see how much further we go. But
I mean, we haven't even gotten to the opposition public comments, which I happen to think are the most interesting of all, but
we'll get there.
Too, I don't know.
Right. And whether or not that's included.
So much clapping in the background.
This bill would invariably result in fewer instructional minutes spent on the discussion of Israel and Palestine, because teachers would be afraid and school boards would be afraid to touch the subject. So we don't get at the root of that problem that our student colleague and brave speaker had. We actually continue to perpetuate the same things that make Jews unsafe in schools, because we make teachers.
He makes Jews unsafe in school, this guy.
And school boards afraid to talk about them. And so if you want to find, we have plenty of ways, and please talk to us about the ways that we engage students in hard conversations amongst people of different ethnic backgrounds and needs and priorities to create spaces where they can have conversations oftentimes more bravely than we can as adults. But I really want to encourage us to not, because we have a hard time having those conversations, not perpetuate that onto the younger generation. They are ready to have those conversations in safe ways. And when we talk about, my last comment, this idea that we hope to get this policy correct as we move it forward, I encourage us to think about this committee as a classroom, and we would never give somebody an A on work that doesn't meet the expectations and say, well, get better next time, right? We would say, hey, go back, correct your work, come back, here are the expectations that we have, and we need this piece of work that you've turned in to meet the expectations so we can give you the grade that you deserve. Passing this bill should be the endorsement of this committee that this bill is ready for the assembly floor. And so I implore us to have the conversation here about this bill being problematic in many ways around censorship, around the definition of Zionism, and
notice here he mentioned censorship, right? There's
yeah.
Go ahead.
This guy, I wonder what his comrades think about his notion of, having a student, forcing a student to do the work over and over again until they get it right. I mean, that to me sounds like capitalism or something, right? Where you're forcing hard work instead of just giving the grade. I don't know that that's really equitable, what he's describing there. I would be surprised if his folks with an X would be, accepting of this view. But the whole conversation is so irrelevant because 715 doesn't even mention Israel. And this is what blows my mind. They have created this imaginary world that he obviously lives in, where everything, no matter what it is about Israel and Palestine. The bill doesn't talk about it at all. At all. They just invent it. That's...
By the way, if there are any legislators watching, I'd like to propose that you use a gut and amend for 1468 for mental health resources for teachers like this. Would be helpful.
And I would invite a question later about just how the explicit nature of calling out anti-Zionism separate from other forms of hate is problematic. I will end my time here, but I would really invite the chairs.
Not in the bill.
Around why we're pulling anti-Semitism out from other forms of hate and discrimination.
And also note that, again, he wants to be an evangelist for anti-Zionism in his classrooms. That's what he's fighting for.
Well, if everyone else just would get out of his way so that he could teach the kids the real truth about Zionism.
Yeah, that appears completely predatory to me.
Separate and apart and exceptional from those other forms. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Lowenthal, Mr. Alvarez, anyone else in the queue? Ms. Bonta? Okay.
I know that, so Lowenthal's statements here are really interesting. And so are Alvarez, but sorry, 9. I really want to get to some of the public comments, and I don't know how to do that.
Let's maybe skip Alvarez and Lowenthal because they're pretty okay.
We can maybe do a side thing with them. What the problem with Lowenthal? This whole this identity politics thing, right? And he's going to talk about being, the only Jewish kid in his school and how important this is, and then he's going to talk about how his best friend is up in the and sitting in the opposition with his sister, and they're sitting there with their keffiyehs and speaking on behalf of AROC. So, the identity politics needs to be something we walk away from. It shouldn't be about that at all. It should be about, if you're going to have protections for students in K-12, they should apply to everybody, but they don't, which is why we need a bill separate from everybody else for Jewish students, because when you have 3% of your population getting 73% of all hate crimes at them, you kind of have to separate it from everything else, because if you don't, then you're not going to be able to solve it. And that's the bottom line that they just will not admit to ever wanting to focus on, is that maybe, just maybe, these teachers who aren't accountable are never held accountable. And just maybe the school board trustees who know that they didn't allow it, they don't know what's going on. They're not going to be sued. They're not going to be complained against. So they'll, continue as that is the whole point of why this whole thing needed to happen. And I'm sick and tired of all lives mattering us. I am so sick of it. It's inappropriate, disgusting.
and again, what is so powerful about this hearing, and then we'll skip. I want to at least play Bonta's part, if that's okay. Before
yes,
we,
that was right. That's the thing is like there's so many more comments here from the legislature, but yeah, let's skip ahead to Bonta, who is the representative from Oakland, which is one of the most, I mean, there are so many problematic districts in California, but, and Lowenthal is from Long Beach. And what's interesting is that in Long Beach, you actually have really strong leadership from the teachers there who are doing what I would consider to be a pretty good job of balancing things and bringing things that are like, they're doing a great job. And it's surprising that, you know, they're representative of this. And then Alvarez, of course, from Chula Vista, who is fantastic, but we can maybe focus on him a little bit later.
On a topic like this. And, you know, I go back to the fact that it's our third iteration of.
Okay, so they're talking about the bill. Let's skip ahead to what's this guy saying?
If we're focused on anti-Semitism, as we've been talking about, why expand this definition of nationality so largely?
I do want to touch on this because so here, this opposition guy mentions something about national origin. And again, they are, they want to create an exception for Israelis only, that you could that you can talk about the Jewish ethno-state in any way that you want,
but you can't do it to Mexico.
But you can only do it to Israel and Israelis. That they want the Israeli exception to civil rights in California.
That's what I'd be interested.
So this is what he's going to say here.
Thank you. I will do my best to respond directly to that. And if I don't, feel free to interrupt me. You can stop me because I want to speak directly to that.
Right.
The first concern we want to mention is around the teacher repression component and the UCP.
The teacher repression component?
Teacher repression component. It's called teacher containment because you're out of control.
That of the UCPs that have been submitted against teachers in California, as far as I know, all of them, and I could be missing something that is not relevant in this bucket, but
how does he know?
How does he know how many? Like that is not publicly available material. Like I want to know what he's talking about.
He's lying.
The bucket that I'm talking about is teachers who expressed a pro-peace or anti-genocide stance and got labeled as anti-Semitic for that. So our concern around the UCP process is
pro-peace, anti-genocide stance.
Do you know who used that phrase originally? Representative Ilhan Omar, when she went to Columbia University, and she said, oh, you know, not anti-Semitic, but all of these pro-genocide students, she was talking about the Jews, right? So here he is using what is obviously the exact kind of anti-Semitism that would be, that he would be held accountable for should this bill pass.
And he gets much worse, by the way. He gets much worse.
Much worse.
Can we make sure that the UCPs apply specifically to anti-Semitism, that is discrimination against Jewish people on their basis of their religion or ethnicity, and not on their beliefs on a foreign state or foreign policy? If we can address that, I think you'd see a different attitude from the opposition.
So he's inching closer. So now you get to see we're okay with religion and ethnicity. We're not okay with nationality. That's basically what he said.
The other one I'll name is similar, which is in this section, section 212, there's a much longer definition of nationality than there used to be. And it begs the question, if we're focused on anti-Semitism, as we've been talking about, why expand this definition of nationality so large?
Because people don't understand that Jews are from Israel.
And some of the things that didn't come up in this conversation in my piece that we were concerned about in the opposition is, what else does this apply to? Will we see UCPs that challenge the teaching of Japanese American internment, that challenge the teaching of slavery because of what it might do to a student based on a certain national origin?
It doesn't challenge the teaching of anything.
So the language around nationality and discrimination based on nationality, as well as the language around UCPs and the definition, again, of anti-Semitism on what may be prosecuted, are two very important areas that we would like to talk about.
Thank you. I appreciate you being specific. I appreciate the specifics.
We're going to go to Bonta now.
As we make this.
Most importantly, the testimony from the opposition and both the test. Thank you. I want to appreciate the authors, both the testimony from proponents and most importantly, the testimony from the opposition and the tweeners in this moment in time.
I love how they call it the tweeners.
I
hate that
really
word.
appreciate
it's weird.
Assemblymember Alvarez's kind of tutorial from your perspective around how you go about making decisions. And I see the blessing of being a representative from the Bay Area is that we get a lot of people coming up here to Sacramento with the ability to hop on a train or drive up here to be able to speak and testify. And I just want to say that is so incredibly critical, and I'm very thankful for it. I think about the role that our schools play in this country.
It also means that things are very lopsided.
And I've always thought that the role of our schools is really to do two things. One is to make sure that we are preserving and, quite frankly, facilitating a representative democracy. And by ensuring that we have the ability to have people who are able to have critical discourse, to be able to understand our histories, to understand the context of their experience within the context of what is happening throughout not only this country and others' experiences, but throughout the world. And
see, I thought schools were supposed to teach math and science and English. I didn't know it was supposed to teach all that.
In this country to actually have a democracy that we can rely on.
She's still talking about democracy. She's stuck in November of 2024 still.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. The end of democracy.
And the second is to ensure that we're creating a place and a space for children and youth to be that will be safe and that will allow them to thrive and become the beautiful individuals that we know they have all the potential to be. And the lens with which I look at this piece of legislation, and quite frankly had the ability and honor to work closely with the Jewish Caucus and other members and colleagues to be able to work on, is primarily through that lens. And on the aspect of ensuring that we are naming the harm that comes when we create environments that are unsafe and discriminatory in our schools. I hold school board members responsible for that.
Good. That's good.
Probably because I was a school board member. I don't think it's a bad thing in this moment in time when there's been such an incredible rise in not only anti-Semitism, instances of anti-Semitism, but also Islamophobia, to make sure to name that. I put forward legislation all the time that speaks to, and specifically in my advocacy for those bills, talks about the importance of raising out anti-Blackness, API hate, anti-immigration rhetoric that talks about anti-Latino actions and policies that this government might take. And so
that's the federal government, right? There's my
a means of allyship. I also think it's important to be able to, in this moment in time, recognize that it's important to talk about anti-Semitism. And for those reasons, I was supportive of this specific focus, recognizing the cost that it has. And I just want to kind of recognize that.
I don't understand this. I have to say, whatever this is that she's saying here, like, I appreciate that she's recognizing that anti-Semitism is a problem, but I'm concerned that from her perspective, it is a problem exclusively from one part of society and probably one part of the government, which is the federal government, right? What she's saying here is incredible. What is the cost of protecting Jewish students?
It's an incredible cost. It's a huge cost, right? That we have to implement some protections for this teeny tiny little minority that's getting, almost 75% of all hate crimes directed at them. I mean, I get cost. Okay, fine. We'll have some cost.
And I just want to say, again, the stats do not lie. The facts are facts. 3% versus 70+% of the hate crime. And she is sitting here talking about this bill, which is meant to address that, carries a heavy cost. Can you imagine if that kind of statement was ever said about any other community in California?
I mean,
let's see the full thing.
Anti-Semitism. And for those reasons, I was supportive of this specific focus, recognizing the cost that it has. And I just want to kind of recognize that there is a cost to it. The cost to it is that we are not explicitly talking about discrimination more broadly. This bill does not reference anti-Blackness or API hate or one's immigration status or
the cost of making sure anti-Semitism stops is that we're not going to be talking about other people right now. We're going to be forced to only talk about those Jews. That's a heavy cost.
Yeah.
I wonder why students in the state feel discriminated against and belittled. I wonder. It's baffling.
In my heart, I'm okay with that because I know that you all will be just as supportive and express just as much allyship when we have those conversations and those fights
I'm sure you'll
moving
find it,
forward. And then I wrestled with the idea of this foundational purpose of our schools to protect our democracy.
No.
And
No,
Education.
it's to teach reading and math.
Yeah.
And I hear the opposition's testimony about the fear that is not written on this page, that is not in this legislation in this moment in time, but what may come. And
God forbid
and that is really
protections for Jews.
I have to acknowledge that and hold that and also protect that fear, protect and preserve, and work really hard to make sure that that fear is not realized.
So offensive.
That is my commitment as a legislator, to make sure and ensure that that doesn't happen in this legislation or any legislation for that matter, particularly as it relates to our educational process. And I really appreciate you naming that, because it helps me as a legislator be able to engage in the advocacy and in the collaborative spirit.
How long does it take to say nothing? Jesus, like how long do you need to talk in order to say absolutely nothing?
And to be clear, what she's saying here, I actually had to watch this more than once to understand exactly what she was saying about naming this. She is specifically talking about anti-Zionism and the notion of Zionism versus Judaism and all this from our kippah-wearing friend.
And we're all sitting here being forced to listen to this, stuff about Jews instead of talking about what I really want to talk about, which is whatever.
Right.
This moment in time around this specific piece of legislation. So I want to thank you for that. And
you're welcome.
And I did ask that same question of my colleagues, and or a version of it, certainly not as eloquently as you have offered it.
Mm-hmm.
But I fully believe that this Democratic California legislature is committed to protecting our democracy. And I fully believe that we are focused on wanting to be able to protect and preserve that democracy within the context of our educational system. So for me, that means that it is imperative that we create the space and the place to be able to criticize governments, to criticize.
Oh, there it is.
And speak.
Yeah,
there it is.
Now she's getting.
You better make sure that those Jews don't prevent us from doing all the criticism that we want to do, that labels them baby killers and labels them, racist, and labels them as colonizers, because we want to preserve our democracy and continue that rhetoric. And I'm just making sure that you don't think maybe you're going to slip in some stuff in this bill that prevents us from doing that.
Which, by the way,
Oakland. What is in the water in Oakland? I want to know, because, oh my God.
And again, nobody is talking about that. Nobody is talking about that. Nobody would support that extreme approach that she's even. The fact that she's proposing that is insane. Totally inappropriate.
Oh, it gets better, yeah.
And it gets better. So
it gets better.
Criticize governments, to criticize and speak to the horrors that have been committed by government. And I just want to say that that's my commitment as this bill moves forward, to make sure that that is central to what.
Note that she is part of the government, by the way.
Ultimately gets articulated. And just because it was said before, and I appreciate Assemblymember Lowenthal's comments on this, the legislative process is really, really hard to grasp. I think it's one of the reasons why we are so skeptical sometimes of government. And being here for a few years, I fully kind of understand and appreciate that. This is one committee of many that is reviewing, for the most part, intent language. And I think that's really important for us to hold. Because
she's saying that it's good to be confused and distrustful of government
around how this legislation will get shaped over time.
I think that's what she's saying.
And then I think about the third thing, which is, do we need to do this right now? Did we need to rush, perhaps, to?
Here's where she does score at least 1 point with me, at least.
The only point, yeah.
Put forward intent language. Did we need to do a gut and amend in this moment in time? Did we need to do a lot? Did we need to? And around that, I say yes, we do, because what is happening at the federal government right now.
Not just the federal government, my friend, but also at the local levels.
Read the bill, please.
And so stark, and people are filled with such incredible fear right now that I absolutely think that it's important that California responds to this moment, and that we do so with urgency. And I don't want to do that at the expense of making sure that we engage in the legislative process fully. I think we're doing that. This is our opportunity to see this in this first committee. It will go through many other policy committees. It will go through, fiscal committees potentially on down the road as this bill continues to take shape over time. But the urgency to start and to name the fact that we need to do something is what drove me and is driving me to make sure that we have an opportunity to do that. It will ultimately not be a rush. It will be a very good representation of our collective understanding and what needs to be captured in legislation.
They've been working on this for 2 years. Like, is that a rush?
And
They're so rushed, right?
Our caucuses have
not a rush.
assured us of that, and I commit to that as well. And I'm going on, but I did want to just say one last thing that Assemblymember Alvarez raised, which I think is also an elephant in the room that we need to address. There was legislation that was working its way through this process that had to do with
That's my favorite part.
the framing of ethnic studies in a way that I believe, as a member of the Black Caucus and a member of the Latino Caucus, would be harmful to our efforts to make sure that our stories had the ability to be told.
Stop
with
the tape.
the same amount of urgency.
Not only does she talk around in circles, but now she's talking about something that we're not even supposed to be talking about because it's not what is on the docket. But what she says here is, and no fan of 1468 was I, but it was about putting content standards and transparency around what's being taught in schools in ethnic studies classes. It didn't have any of the, other provisions, but that she found problematic because it prevents telling of her stories or something, right? Right. Okay. Let's continue.
We need in this moment in time. And so just as I commit to be an ally with this piece of legislation, I also want to ensure people who are looking at this piece of legislation that it's just as critical that we don't give up the fight to fully fund and fully implement ethnic studies.
Yeah, no,
that's a separate conversation.
It is separate.
And I'm glad that we've bifurcated those conversations with this legislation. And I look forward to working with my colleagues to make sure that we have safe places in our schools and also ensure that we have an opportunity to have ethnic studies curriculum fully implemented throughout our schools and funded by the state of California.
No.
So my question to
Over my dead body.
And to
Actually, I shouldn't say that because somebody might actually do something about that, God forbid, but yeah.
Does your definition around the kind of the purpose of our schools, the point that I was raising about protecting our democracy, and that including an ability to criticize our governments and governments, including Israel, is that something that you...
I love that. I love that she did that. I mean, that's where she gave away, she gave away the... We have to be able to criticize Israel. There's nothing in here about the prevention of criticizing any government or any kind of political expression by students or other people who have those rights in the classroom settings.
But also, do you agree with my understanding of what education is, right? It's like, how coercive is that? Like, because what if they're going to sit there and say, no, we think that schools are for teaching math and history and science and reading? She'd be like, well, then I can't support this bill, right?
Well,
what you going to say? Like,
right. Well, again, I think what she's saying is that a strong public education is important for democracy, but the kind of public education that she is advocating for, which is ethnic studies, is not about education.
It's destroying democracy. It's the whole point of it is dismantling democracy. It's like
it literally is about dismantling the United States government. Is what that is promoting. So.
But I do want to say that I understand why she's so connected to it. I mean, her husband, who is currently the Attorney General in California, Rob Bonta, was one of the original authors of the ethnic studies bill that we are still dealing with today. So I'd like to thank the Bonta family from Oakland for all that they have contributed to California education process.
All right, let's see what she has to say.
Good Lord.
Let's see. Oops. Hold on.
You all have visibility into enshrining in legislation.
I think what I'll say on that is that we are going to have to grapple with what constitutes anti-Semitism in this bill. All of the major accepted definitions of anti-Semitism basically acknowledge that criticism of the state of Israel is not per se anti-Semitic. It is in some cases, depending on how you do it. In some cases, it's not.
Correct.
I don't know if.
By the way, good for Zubair here, right? Perfect answer to a bizarre question. Phenomenal.
What's funny to me about all this, like the criticizing Israel piece, is like they've obviously never spoken to an Israeli, because that's all we do is criticize the Israeli government. Like it's the national pastime in Israel is criticizing the Israeli government. But that's not what they do.
But what's interesting here is what Assemblymember Bonta is saying. What she's advocating for is the kind of criticism that she enjoys or that she appreciates. It's not the kind of criticism in general. It is acceptable. And the same with our friend from the other guy here from Oakland.
Yes.
And by the way, so Zubair's done answering here. Adis is going to give a phenomenal. I think this is her best answer.
This is like the mic drop for Assemblywoman Adis.
So good job. So here we go.
But our goal is not, and I don't think there's any member of the Jewish caucus that would say that the goal in this legislation is to prohibit course content about Palestine and the state of Israel, or criticism of the state of Israel.
Because that's not what this is about. But yeah.
And we're just so people know we're right at the top. You're going to hear a few more stunning comments. Really, we kind of saved the best for last, but we're going to hear from Adis, and then we'll hear from this teacher from Oakland.
I guess the only thing, well, number one, I absolutely agree. Number two, I would say that if a child is made to feel like a bad person because they believe in the state of Israel and they're made to feel unsafe and they're called a murderer and they're called an oppressor and they're blamed for a whole host of things that we've heard children blamed for in our school system, that is anti-Semitic, and that we would need to address anti-Semitism and discrimination in that situation. I do think our children should not be the targets because of their beliefs. And so this legislation is absolutely not about saying that you can't criticize Israel or you can't discuss the conflict, but we shouldn't be targeting children for their personal beliefs around Israel.
She's amazing.
May I respond, Assemblymember Bonta? Or sorry, to the chair?
Through the chair.
Yeah, thank you.
So again, now Adis has given a phenomenal answer, and this is our last comment here from this portion of the hearing. So we'll hear what he says. And again, Nicole, to your point, I want people to realize that we have Israeli students in our classrooms. Imagine being an Israeli student who is subject to the kinds of diverse expressions that Mia Bonta is promoting, and that Mr. Gabriel Kahn from Oakland is promoting. So let's hear what he has to say.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for naming part of this bill that we had overlooked entirely so far, which is a point of shame for me. But we overlooked entirely the discrimination at the same time against Islamophobia. And it's been so clear how much of this conversation has been about anti-Semitism that my heart breaks for the people in the audience who have been listening to me speak and not hearing me say anything about the existing Islamophobia in our schools and in our country. And it's worth naming that I think, to respond to Assemblymember Alvarez's point as well, that we would also like further discussion on what that means. For example, the equation of all people in Gaza as Hamas terrorists should be considered Islamophobic, right? The justification of the murdering of children halfway around the world.
Listen to what he's saying. The justification of the murdering of children halfway around the world. What is he saying?
Oh my God. He's hijacking, which is what they do. They hijack. And how is his comrade next to him allowed to sit in this ed committee in the state capitol wearing a terror wrap? Like, this is where I just...
But imagine what he's saying. So he's saying justification. So if you are an Israeli American student in his class, and you are defending your homeland, or you care about your homeland defending itself, what kind of experience would you have in his classroom? Not a happy one, I don't think. Let's hear what else he has to say.
For an ethno-state project should be considered Islamophobic, and
for an ethno-state project. What other people besides Jews and Israelis hear that kind of language?
Can you imagine him talking that way about India?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And so as we continue, it seems, to discuss this bill after we will pass it through, we would like for that to be part of the conversation as well. How do we have an honest conversation around Islamophobia in our schools and in our state? what it means.
How about you
to
do
serve
it not when
democracy
you're
for
discussing
people, for
anti-Semitism?
young
How
people
about you just
who
do it
watch people
separately?
look like
Give it
them,
its own space.
get murdered and murdered and justifying their murder for an ethno-state project that they had nothing to do with to begin.
So basically, what he is saying is, that he should be allowed to completely express his fringe radical completely out of the mainstream. By the way, he is the pro-genocide advocate here, right? He's the one who wants terrorists to stay in power and to slaughter people at will. But this is what he's promoting in his 8th grade humanities math class, whatever it is.
And the language that you see come out of that discussion here in California, abroad, these things don't have borders. Islamophobia and anti-Semitism do not have borders. And it would be nice if we could contain the conversation to schools, but unfortunately, we just can't, right? The other point I'd like to make, I think a case study that's really important is a teacher being reprimanded for a statement on a T-shirt or a poster, I can't remember, that said, "From the river to the sea." The assumption from the Zionists who submitted the UCP was that is
from the Zionists.
The Zionists used it as a slur. The Zionists who
from that Zionist who. And by the way, I would just like to say that last year, Congress passed a resolution 883, I believe it was, or 833. I think it was 883, that said plainly that the phrase "from the river to the sea" is hate speech. It said it. It was in Congress. They passed it. And here we have a teacher who's like, hey, I'm wearing a shirt that's got hate speech on it. So, if I was wearing a shirt with the KKK on it, or, a swastika or a Heil Hitler, whatever, like, I should be able to wear that stuff in school. Like, hey, I want to wear a Confederate flag t-shirt in my classroom. Like, well, you can't stop me.
Yeah.
For the destruction of the state of Israel. But Palestinians are a stateless people. And so when we say "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," we're talking about a group of people who don't have a state, and we're talking about a group of people who deserve to be free, right? So when we talk about what is and is not anti-Semitic, we have to answer these questions too. What does it mean to say that a people should be free, separate and apart from the land that's been taken away from them? And to do justice to our students in these classrooms, both the Arab students and the Jewish students, and students who have an interest in the ongoing events and future of our humanity, period, for which most of the students I teach are in that larger majority. These conversations cannot be shied away from. And I'd urge us to continue to have conversations around Islamophobia with the same dedication and diligence that we're having conversations around anti-Semitism.
AB 715 is about saying that hating Jews because they're Jews is bad. This guy took up so much airspace. It's his fault, actually, that this meeting was like a 3-hour thing, because like, how long does he have to talk about something that is not even part of the discussion that he just like, who elected that guy to be the representative for the opposition? It's fascinating to me. He is the exact prototype of the activist teacher who all they want to do is impose their worldview onto impressionable children. And they do not want anybody telling them that they can't do that. They don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to show anybody what they're teaching. They want no transparency, and they want you to ask no questions. Just give them your children and bugger off. And this is why parents across this country do not trust the education system. It's not because there are so many, there are a lot of amazing teachers and but that's not why we don't trust them. We don't trust them because of this guy.
Exactly.
How am I supposed to know, of all my kids, teachers, which one of them is going to be this guy?
Right. And he's aggressive in his desire to
groom
these students, essentially. So very, very seemingly predatory behavior. So, we're at the bottom of the 9 o'clock hour. Do we want to? This is the end of the substantive part of the hearing. So
I think, I don't know if we should maybe do a separate session where it's just the popcorn session, right? Where we're just watching all of the public comments and the opposition. I think it almost warrants its own thing. Especially we could be here until midnight, right? But this is kind of why these things take so long, is because every single thing that each one of these legislators said and every response was taken, there are nuances that are so hard for the average person to really understand and wrap their heads around, because there was a question so what do we do to support this? And, what's next? they're going to be talking about this again tomorrow, right? And so much of this has to do with, are you focused on what the bill is and what it isn't, because what it isn't, stop taking up time talking about what it isn't, because you're ruining it for everybody. Saying that hating Jews because they're Jews is bad seems pretty obvious. And yet here we are, a 3-hour meeting at the California State Legislature, arguing about it.
Again,
it's par for the course for every time this topic comes up, every single time.
And again, very happy that it happened. It needed to happen. It's well overdue in California. So very happy from that standpoint. But this needs to carry on and push this through. This bill.
So last week, you had put together an action alert for AB 715, asking the legislators to include IRA in this bill because it wasn't included, despite what we just went through and heard. Everyone was saying, talking about how they were trying to say that it was, but it needs to be included. And so, I mean, everyone who's watching, we can definitely have that. It still stands, right? Because IRA is not included in this. So here it is again. Perfect.
Yeah, and it's generally, I mean, look, we generally support 715. It's a huge step in the right direction. This conversation that we had here in this hearing is super important. It needed to happen. And as members said, there will be more hearings. There will be more conversations around this. So again, very happy that we've pivoted to this direction, to the right direction. And now we all have to fight, I think, together very strongly to strengthen our position here on these issues.
I think the word fight is so critical here because
it's a fight. With all due respect, it's a fight to people who don't like it.
But this is one of those battles that is not going to stay won. So we prevailed here. First of all, the vote was unanimous. Okay, so much to the dismay of liberated ethnic studies, that you see here in this image, and all the about 100 keffiyeh wearing people who came in opposition, who don't want their right to slander and call for the elimination of Israel and of anybody who thinks Israel has a right to exist. They should be eliminated as well. We should do a whole separate thing just on that, and maybe we will do that and just post it, because it is so important for people to be able to really see what we're up against, and to know that when these people come in, and you see a lot, these are the JVPs, right? They're saying, as a Jew, as a daughter of Holocaust survivors, like, forget about your identity politics. This isn't about, are you a Jewish person, so you support it, or this is about an ideology that has taken hold of our country, and Jews are not immune to it. Okay.
Right.
So just because you are Jewish doesn't mean you're going to be on one side of this or on the other side of this. This guy, Gabriel, the teacher that we're railing on, was wearing a kippah, so he's identifying as Jewish. I can promise you that the intersectionality, between him and I is like, I mean, how many different oceans can I put in between the two of us, right? So identity politics, this is why identity politics is so dangerous, because you're conflating these things that don't have anything to do with each other. And I always tell people, I am not colorblind, but I am not basing my opinion about you based on your hair color or eye color or skin color, because that's not what's inside your heart and soul. And what we all need to understand very clearly is that we have to look inside the hearts and souls of these people who are in opposition to understand who they really are. Whether they say they're as a Jew or not is irrelevant. It's what's in their hearts and minds, what's in their soul. That's what matters. And the fight is going to be a fight that we have to keep having over and over again. And we have to be prepared for that. So everybody who's still watching, good for you. Love you guys. Let's get this IRA amendment included. This is really important. We've seen how it works. I will also say that there's a danger of, it slipping in the other direction, and there's always fallout from trying to, talk about IRA. But lots of cities in California, by the way, have already done this, and you have a great post about that. But lots of other states are also doing it. And I just want everyone to know that this is something that we're going to have to keep fighting for, because the bad guys sitting over here, the liberated ethnic studies, all them, like, they're they have millions and billions of dollars coming in from Hamas and Qatar and I don't know where else, you know, like all the bad guys, like they're so well funded. But what we have to do to get past that is that we have to lead with what we know is the right thing to do. And if we're able to get enough people doing that, we can beat them. But phase one, let's get the test tomorrow and then move on to the next fight because there's a lot of them.
Well, I want to thank, again, we are at this late hour, so I want to thank everybody for staying on this long, and I hope it was informative. This was a very important hearing. It was a long hearing, but there were a lot of legislators on the record, and I think that tomorrow, hopefully, we will hear more legislators on the record in this regard, and we will keep you posted. So maybe we'll do, Nicole, maybe depending on the hearing tomorrow, we might do another one, a follow-up.
We'll have to figure out how to condense it, but I do hope that this was illuminating for people in terms of like what the process is for getting a bill passed. It is very complicated and there's a lot of negotiating and wheeling and dealing that goes on behind the scenes. What I am most encouraged by is that we definitely this was a long overdue to have this conversation out in the open by the legislators. And now we just have to keep pushing because even though it feels sometimes that these legislators aren't listening, they're just, politicking, they really hear us. And I really just want to say thank you to Assemblyman Spur and Assemblywoman Addis. I mean, I tell you what's not easy is continuing to push forward on something like this, which is inexplicably heavy, right? What was the word? Complicated, heavy, whatever.
It carries a cost, she said.
Carries cost. Doing the right thing is always hard, especially when other people are trying to force you to do what you know is the wrong thing. So kudos to them. I want to say also amazing kudos. We didn't even get to any of them, but all of the parents who came to speak for this bill, who were able to come in, from the Bay Area, and the parent groups there who are organizing them, is such huge kudos, like the endless hours that they work mobilizing and coordinating and organizing buses and things, and to get people, and there's so many of them that came to speak, and we will not let them have done that in vain. And even though it looks like the bad guys have more people, we're on the right side of this, and I know that without a shadow of a doubt. So with that,
I do also want to say congratulations to all the Israelis who went and participated. That's super important for them to see your voice and to see your face and to hear your voice. So thank you for doing that, and thank you to Maya. I know that Maya was the one who coordinated that. So good job, Maya. If you're watching, absolutely.
Love you guys.
All right, so we will say goodnight, and thank you again for joining. We will report back on developments as they happen.
Yeah, and go to ICAN and submit this this action alert, save it, and send it to your friends. The committee's happening. The meeting's happening tomorrow, and we are going to keep pushing on this, and we will update everybody on how that goes.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you to Peer K-12 as well, co-sponsoring this, as well.